piercing wail of a Trill infant shatters the eerie silence on Nexus Prime, catching human soldier Daniel Brown off guard. He freezes, plasma rifle raised, surrounded by the fallen bodies of his unit. The nursery before him wasn't supposed to exist, not here, not in the heart of this war-torn hellscape. Daniel's breath catches in his throat as he approaches the lone survivor. The baby's iridescent skin shimmers in the dim light, a stark reminder of the vast differences between their species. For a moment, he hesitates. This is the enemy, the very beings responsible for the carnage around him. But as the child's cries grow more desperate, Daniel makes a choice that will alter the course of galactic history. He scoops up the infant, cradling her against his armored chest. "It's okay, little one," he whispers, surprising himself with the gentleness in his voice. "I've got you." Kira. The name comes unbidden, a fleeting memory of peace before the war. As Kira's cries soften, Daniel's comm unit crackles to life. "Brown, report in. What's your status?" Daniel hesitates, knowing the consequences of his actions. "Nursery secured," he responds, omitting crucial details. Returning to base. The journey back is fraught with danger. Every shadow could hide a Trill ambush, every sound a potential threat. Daniel moves swiftly, hyper-aware of the precious cargo in his arms. He can already imagine the uproar his decision will cause among the human military leadership. Upon reaching the forward operating base, chaos erupts. Officers shout orders. Soldiers train weapons on the alien child. And Daniel finds himself at the center of a storm. "Stand down," he roars, shielding Kira with his body. "She's just a baby." The base commander, a grizzled veteran named Colonel Hartley, pushes through the crowd. His face contorts with a mix of disbelief and anger. "Brown, have you lost your mind? That's a Trill, our enemy." "Sir, with all due respect, she's an innocent," Daniel argues, standing his ground. "We're better than this. We have to be." As the confrontation escalates, a young scientist breaks through the commotion. "Wait," she calls out, waving a datapad. "You need to see this." She approaches cautiously, scanning Kira with a handheld device. Her eyes widen. This infant. She has unique genetic markers. They're consistent with Trill royalty. The revelation sends shockwaves through the assembled soldiers. Colonel Hartley's expression shifts from anger to calculated interest. If that's true, we may have stumbled onto a valuable bargaining chip. Before anyone can respond, alarms blare throughout the base. A junior officer rushes in, face pale. "Massive Trill battle fleet just entered the system, sir. They're led by..." It's the Emperor himself. The pieces fall into place with sickening clarity. Kira isn't just any Trill infant. She's the sole survivor of the royal bloodline, hidden away after a failed coup attempt. Now, the most powerful being in the Trill Empire has come to reclaim his heir. As the human leadership scrambles to formulate a response, Daniel feels the weight of his decision grow exponentially. He looks down at Kira, now sleeping peacefully in his arms, unaware of the galactic firestorm brewing around her. In that moment, he knows he can't let her become a pawn in this cosmic chess game. With chaos engulfing the base and all eyes turned toward the sky, Daniel makes his choice. He slips away, Kira secure against his chest, heading for the war-ravaged outskirts of Nexus Prime. He has no plan, no supplies, and enemies on all sides. But as he disappears into the shadows, Daniel Brown knows one thing for certain. The fate of 2 species now rests in his hands, all because he dared to show compassion in the midst of war. Daniel's heart pounded as he slipped through the shadows of Nexus Prime's ruined streets, Kira nestled securely against his chest. The infant's warmth served as a stark contrast to the cold desolation surrounding them. Crumbling buildings loomed overhead, their jagged silhouettes a grim reminder of the war's devastation. As he ducked behind a collapsed storefront, the distant sound of plasma fire echoed through the air. Daniel tensed, his military training kicking into overdrive. He scanned the area, looking for any sign of movement among the debris-strewn alleys. Well, a gravelly voice cut through the silence. What do we have here? Daniel whirled around, his free hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. A man emerged from the shadows, his weathered face creased with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. He wore a battered flight jacket adorned with various patches, the unmistakable attire of a spacer. "Name's Jack Hawkins," the man said, eyeing Kira with raised eyebrows. "Former colonial marine, current entrepreneur. And you, soldier, look like you could use a ride off this rock." Daniel hesitated, weighing his options. Trust was a luxury he couldn't afford, but desperation clawed at the edges of his persistence. "What's your price?" he asked, voice low and guarded. Jack's eyes glinted. "For you and the little one? Let's say 50,000 credits. Non-negotiable." It was an astronomical sum, but Daniel knew he had no choice. He nodded curtly. "Deal, but we move now." As they navigated the treacherous cityscape, Jack filled the tense silence with bits of intel. "Word is, there's a Trill resistance movement gaining traction," he muttered, guiding them through a maze of twisted metal. "Led by some firebrand named Zara. They're not fans of the Emperor, to put it mildly." Daniel processed this information, his tactical mind already spinning with possibilities. A resistance movement could be a potential ally, or another complication in an already volatile situation. Their progress was halted by the sudden whine of approaching grav bikes. Jack cursed, pulling Daniel into the shadow of a collapsed building. "Stealth's over, kid. Time to run." They sprinted through the ruins, plasma bolts sizzling past their heads. Daniel's world narrowed to the pounding of his feet and the precious weight of Kira in his arms. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a squad of human soldiers, weapons raised. "Stand down, Brown," a familiar voice barked. Major Marcus Steele stepped forward, his face a mask of almost unchecked fury. "Hand over the Trill, and maybe I won't have you court-martialed on the spot." Daniel's mind raced, searching for a way out. But before he could respond, the air erupted with the distinctive shriek of Trill energy weapons. A strike team had caught up with them, turning the standoff into a three-way firefight. Chaos engulfed the street. Daniel found himself fighting alongside Steele and his men, muscle memory taking over as they battled the Trill attackers. For a moment, it was as if the past few hours had never happened. They were comrades in arms once more. But as the tide of battle shifted, Daniel spotted an opening. With a silent apology to his former brothers in arms, he seized the opportunity. Scooping up Kira, he darted away from the fray, leaving the human soldiers to face the Trill alone. He reunited with Jack amid the acrid smell of ozone and burning rubble. The smuggler led them to an abandoned Trill research facility, its sleek architecture marred by scorch marks and shattered windows. "We can lay low here," Jack panted. "Catch our breath before making a break for the ship." As they searched the facility for supplies, Daniel's attention was drawn to a strange device on a nearby workbench. It was unmistakably Trill in design, its iridescent surface pulsing with an otherworldly energy. "Well, I'll be damned," Jack whistled. "That's a prototype cloaking device. Worth a fortune on the black market." Daniel's mind raced with possibilities. "Can you get it working?" Before Jack could answer, the facility's emergency lights flared to life. Alarms blared, warning of approaching forces from multiple directions. They were trapped. "Get to the ship," Daniel ordered, thrusting Kira into Jack's arms. "I'll create a diversion with the cloaking device." Jack hesitated for a moment, then nodded grimly. Don't get yourself killed, kid. I still expect to get paid. As Jack disappeared with Kira, Daniel activated the cloaking device. The air around him shimmered, bending light in impossible ways. He moved through the facility, like a ghost, leading their pursuers on a wild chase. Just as he prepared to make his own escape, a figure materialized before him. A Trill female, her skin adorned with intricate patterns, stood blocking his path. Her eyes blazed with a fierce intelligence. "Daniel Brown," she said, her voice carrying an unmistakable aura of authority. "I am Zara, leader of the Trill Resistance. We've been watching you." Daniel tensed, ready for a fight. But Zara raised her hands in a placating gesture. "I'm not here to harm you," she continued. "I'm here to offer you a choice. Join us. Help us use the child as a symbol to rally our people against the Emperor's tyranny. Together, we can end this war and forge a new future for both our species." The sounds of approaching troops echoed through the facility. Time was running out. Daniel stood at a crossroads, the weight of two worlds pressing down upon him. The fate of Kira, the war, and countless lives hung in the balance of his next decision. Daniel's mind raced, processing Zara's offer in a fraction of a second. The weight of two worlds pressed down upon him, but he knew he couldn't risk Kira becoming a pawn in yet another faction's game. Without a word, he activated the experimental cloaking device. The air shimmered around him, bending light in impossible ways. Zara's eyes widened in surprise as Daniel seemingly vanished before her. He slipped past the Trill Resistance leader, his heart pounding in his chest as he navigated the facility's corridors. The sounds of approaching troops grew louder, but Daniel moved like a ghost, expertly evading detection. He made his way through the war-torn streets of Nexus Prime, the cloaking device masking his presence from both human and Trill patrols. Finally, he reached Jack's hidden ship. The grizzled spacer stood at the entrance ramp, cradling Kira with an unexpected gentleness. "Cutting it close, kid," Jack muttered as Daniel deactivated the cloaking device and materialized beside him. They hurried inside the ship, a sleek vessel that Jack proudly introduced as the Stellar Nomad. "She's got a few tricks up her sleeve," he explained, settling into the pilot's seat, "including some top-of-the-line stealth tech that'll get us past that blockade." As Jack fired up the engines, Daniel cradled Kira in his arms, watching the infant's iridescent skin shimmer in the dim light of the cockpit. The Stellar Nomad lifted off, its advanced stealth systems engaged as they climbed through Nexus Prime's atmosphere. "Smooth sailing from here," Jack said with a grin, just as a series of warning lights flashed across the control panel. His smile faded. "Ah, hell. Cloaking systems on the fritz." Daniel leaned forward, tension radiating through his body. "Can you fix it?" Jack's fingers danced across the controls. "Not without landing, and that's not an option right now. We'll have to take the long way around." He adjusted their course, aiming for a dense asteroid field that loomed ahead. As they entered the field, Daniel's eyes sharp. Massive chunks of rock hurtled past the view screen, some larger than the Stellar Nomad itself. Jack's piloting skills were put to the test as he weaved through the deadly obstacles. Suddenly, Kira stirred in Daniel's arms. Her tiny hands reached out, grasping at the air. Daniel watched in amazement as the infant's eyes tracked the movement of the asteroids with uncanny precision. "Jack," Daniel called out, his voice filled with wonder. I think she can sense them." The spacer glanced back, eyebrows raised. "What are you talking about?" Daniel moved closer to the view screen, holding Kira up. "Watch her eyes. She's tracking the asteroids before we can even see them." Jack's expression shifted from skepticism to awe as he observed Kira's movements. "Well, I'll be damned. Looks like we've got ourselves a natural-born navigator." With Kira's unique ability guiding them, Jack skillfully piloted the stellar Nomad through the treacherous asteroid field. Daniel felt a surge of pride and protectiveness wash over him as he watched the infant worker mysterious magic. As they cleared the last of the asteroids, a new shape appeared on their sensors. Jack leaned forward, squinting at the readout. Well, what do you know? Looks like we've stumbled onto Haven. Haven? Daniel asked, still cradling Kira close. Jack nodded, a hint of relief in his voice. Neutral trading post. They don't take sides in galactic squabbles. It's our best bet for repairs and supplies. The stellar Nomad approached the space station, a massive structure hidden within the swirling gases of a nearby nebula. As they docked, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was just the beginning. Jack secured them passage into Haven, using his network of contacts to ensure their arrival went unnoticed by the station's authorities. As they stepped off the ship, Daniel was struck by the diversity of the beings that filled Haven's bustling corridors. Humans and Trill moved among countless other species, all coexisting in a fragile peace. First things first, Jack said, gesturing to a nearby repair shop. Let's get the Nomad fixed up. Then we'll worry about restocking supplies. As Jack negotiated with the mechanic, Daniel's attention was drawn to a nearby view screen. A news broadcast showed footage of protests on both human and Trill worlds, with crowds calling for an end to the war. He felt a glimmer of hope at the sight of the two species united in their desire for peace. "Excuse me," a voice called out, pulling Daniel from his thoughts. He turned to see a human woman approaching, her eyes fixed on Kira. "I couldn't help but notice your companion. I'm Dr. Alara Tucker, xenobiologist specializing in Trill physiology. Would you allow me to examine her?" Daniel hesitated, his protective instincts flaring. But something in Dr. Tucker's earnest expression made him reconsider. "What exactly are you looking for?" Dr. Tucker's eyes lit up with scientific curiosity. "Your child displays some unique characteristics. I believe she might hold the key to understanding the biological incompatibilities that have fueled tensions between our species for centuries." Daniel glanced at Jack, who gave a subtle nod. "All right," Daniel agreed, "but I'll be present for the entire examination." As they followed Dr. Tucker to her makeshift lab, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that Kira's importance extended far beyond what he had initially imagined. The future of two species might indeed rest in his arms, but not in the way he had first thought. The lab doors slid shut behind them, and Daniel found himself standing at the threshold of a new chapter in their journey, one that promised to unravel the mysteries of Kira's origins and perhaps change the course of human Trill. Relations forever. As Daniel contemplated the implications of Dr. Tucker's examination, a soft beep from his communication device broke the tense silence. He glanced at the screen, his eyes widening as he decrypted the incoming message. "Jack," he called out, "we've got a lead." The spacer sauntered over, curiosity etched on his weathered face. "What kind of lead?" Daniel's fingers flew across the device's interface. An encrypted message from an unknown informant. They claimed to have crucial information about Kira's origins and the true nature of the human-Trill conflict. Dr. Tucker leaned in, her scientific curiosity piqued. "That could be invaluable to my research. Where does this lead take us?" "A remote planet called Viridian 3, Daniel replied, already formulating a plan. "Jack, can the stellar Nomad make the journey?" The smuggler nodded, a hint of excitement in his voice. "She can make it anywhere, kid. But are you sure about this? Could be a trap." Daniel looked down at Kira, her iridescent skin shimmering under the lab's harsh lights. "It's a risk we have to take. This might be our best chance to understand what's really going on." With the decision made, the unlikely trio prepared for their journey. Dr. Tucker gathered her research equipment, eager to continue monitoring Kira's unique physiology. Jack readied the stellar nomad, his experienced hands making quick work of the pre-flight checks. As they left Haven's protective embrace, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that they were hurtling towards a turning point in their journey. The vastness of space stretched before them, holding both promise and peril. Days passed in the confines of the stellar nomad, each hour bringing them closer to Viridian 3. Daniel spent the time honing his combat skills, preparing for whatever challenges awaited them. Dr. Tucker continued her examinations of Kira, marveling at the infant's rapid development and unique abilities. As they approached Viridian 3, Jack's voice crackled over the ship's intercom. "We got company, folks. Multiple ships in orbit." Daniel rushed to the cockpit, his heart racing. The view screen showed a web of vessels surrounding the planet. Human military cruisers, sleek Trill Imperial ships, and several unmarked craft that Daniel suspected belonged to the notorious Galactic Syndicate. "It's a damn party up here," Jack muttered, his fingers dancing across the controls. "How do you want to play this, kid?" Daniel's mind raced, weighing their options. They couldn't turn back now, not when they were so close to answers. His eyes fell on the experimental cloaking device, an idea forming. "We use Kira's abilities and the cloaking device," he said, dedication in his voice. "I'll take a shuttle down to the surface. You keep the nomad hidden and be ready for extraction." Jack raised an eyebrow. "That's a hell of a risk you're taking." "It's our only shot," Daniel replied, already moving to prepare the shuttle. Minutes later, Daniel found himself at the controls of the small craft, with Dr. Tucker and Kira securely strapped in behind him. The shuttle detached from the stellar nomad, its experimental cloaking field shimmering to life. Daniel's hands tightened on the controls as they approached the blockade. "All right, Kira," he whispered. "Show us what you can do." As if in response, Kira's eyes began to track the movements of the ships around them. Daniel followed her cues, weaving through the maze of vessels with preternatural precision. Warning klaxons blared as they entered the planet's atmosphere, the shuttle's hull heating up from the friction. They broke through the cloud cover, revealing a dense jungle canopy stretching to the horizon. Daniel aimed for a small clearing near the provided coordinates, setting the shuttle down with a gentle thump. No sooner had they touched down than the jungle erupted with movement. Distant shouts and the whine of energy weapons filled the air. "They've found us," Dr. Tucker said, clutching Kira close. Daniel grabbed the essential gear, including the cloaking device. Into the jungle. Now. They plunged into the dense foliage, the sounds of pursuit growing closer with each passing second. Daniel's military training kicked in as he led them through the treacherous terrain, relying on Kira's enhanced senses to avoid the worst of the hazards. Toxic plants ooze viscous fluids as they pass, their fumes causing Dr. Tucker to cough violently. Daniel pulled her along, knowing they couldn't afford to slow down. They skirted the edge of a quicksand pit, its surface deceptively still. As they pressed deeper into the jungle, the flora began to change. Ancient stone structures emerged from the undergrowth, covered in strange, glowing symbols. Kira reached out towards them, her tiny fingers tracing the air. "Daniel, look," Dr. Tucker exclaimed, pointing at the infant. Kira's skin was pulsing with an otherworldly light, matching the rhythm of the symbols on the ruins. As they watched in amazement, a section of the stone wall slid open, revealing a hidden chamber. With the sounds of their pursuers growing ever closer, Daniel made a split-second decision. He ushered Dr. Tucker and Kira into the opening, following close behind. The stone door sealed shut behind them, plunging them into darkness. Suddenly, the chamber was bathed in a soft, blue light. A holographic figure materialized before them, a tall, ethereal being with features that seemed both familiar and alien. "Welcome, Daniel Brown," the being said, its voice resonating with ancient power. "I am Zephyr, last of the progenitors." "And you," it continued, turning its gaze to Kira, are the key to everything. Daniel's mind reeled as Zephyr began to explain, unraveling a cosmic tapestry that stretched back eons. The true nature of Kira's origins, the manipulated war between humans and Trill, and the grand experiment that had shaped two species. It was almost too much to comprehend. As Zephyr's revelations continued, the walls of the chamber shook with the impact of weapons fire. The unique force field protecting them wouldn't hold forever. The Nexus core must not fall into the wrong hands, Zephyr warned, gesturing to a pulsing crystal embedded in a nearby pedestal. You must protect it and the child. They are the future of both your peoples. Daniel's hand closed around the Nexus core, feeling its power thrum through him. The weight of his new responsibilities settled on his shoulders. No longer just a protector, but a potential savior for two warring races. With a final, thunderous blast, the chamber's entrance began to crumble. Daniel activated the cloaking device, pulling Dr. Tucker and Kira close. "Jack," he whispered into his communicator, hoping against hope that the signal would penetrate the ruins. "We need extraction. Now." As dust and debris filled the air, Daniel prepared to make a desperate run for safety. The fate of two civilizations rested in his arms. Kira in one, the Nexus core in the other. With enemies closing in from all sides and the ancient ruins crumbling around them, Daniel knew that every step, every decision from this moment on would shape the future of the galaxy. He took a deep breath, tightened his grip on Kira and the Nexus core, and prepared to plunge back into the chaos of the jungle. The true test of his commitment was about to begin. The true test of his commitment was about to unfold. As the chamber walls shuddered under the relentless assault, Daniel's mind raced. He glanced at the Nexus core in his hand, its pulsating energy matching the rhythm of his own racing heart. In a flash of inspiration, he grabbed a nearby piece of ancient fabric, quickly fashioning a makeshift sling for Kira. "Dr. Tucker, help me secure Kira," Daniel said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. The xenobiologist nodded, her hands moving swiftly to assist. With Kira safely nestled against his chest, Daniel turned his attention to the Nexus core. "We need to extract it from its housing," he instructed Dr. Tucker. Carefully, as they worked to free the crystalline object, the force field protecting them flickered ominously. Daniel's fingers closed around the cloaking device, his thumb hovering over the activation switch. The instant the Nexus core came free, a deafening crack split the air. The force field collapsed in a shower of sparks, and Daniel hit the switch. The world around them shimmered, reality bending as the cloaking field enveloped them. Just as the cloaking field solidified, a wave of soldiers and mercenaries poured into the chamber. Daniel held his breath, pressing himself and Dr. Tucker against the wall as the intruders rushed past, oblivious to their presence. Using hand signals, Daniel motioned for Dr. Tucker to follow him. They slipped out of the ruins and into the dense jungle beyond, the sounds of frustrated shouts fading behind them. The jungle was a riot of alien life. Bioluminescent plants cast an eerie glow, while unseen creatures chittered and screeched in the canopy above. Daniel led the way, relying on his military training to navigate the treacherous terrain. Suddenly, Kira stirred in her sling, her eyes, glowing with an otherworldly light, fixed on a patch of vegetation ahead. Daniel froze, recognizing the warning. He grabbed Dr. Tucker's arm, pulling her back just as a mass of thorny vines lashed out, narrowly missing them. "How did you dash?" Dr. Tucker began, but Daniel shook his head, pointing to Kira. As they pressed on, Kira's abilities seemed to grow stronger. Her eyes darted from side to side, and Daniel found himself instinctively changing course to avoid hidden pitfalls and poisonous flora. It was as if Kira was speaking directly to his mind, guiding them through the hazards. After what felt like hours of grueling progress, they stumbled upon a clearing, Daniel's heart sank as he took in the sight before them. A bustling outpost sprawled across the jungle floor, dripping with weaponry and swarming with mercenaries. "Galactic Syndicate," Daniel whispered, recognizing the insignia on the uniforms. He motioned for Dr. Tucker to stay low as they crept closer, using the dense foliage as cover. From their vantage point, they observed a flurry of activity. Mercenaries were loading crates onto shuttles, while others huddled around holographic displays, gesturing animatedly. Daniel strained to hear their conversations, his blood running cold as he caught snippets of their plans. Genetic destabilizer. Wipe out both humans and Trill. Generals are arriving soon. He fumbled for a secure communicator, keeping his voice low as he contacted Jack. "We've got a situation. The Syndicate has a weapon that could annihilate both our species. We need immediate extraction and any backup you can muster." Jack's reply came through, laden with static. "Got my hands full up here, kid. Both human and Trill forces on my tail. I'll do what I can, but it might get messy." As Daniel weighed their options, the jungle canopy above the outpost parted. A massive ship, unlike anything he'd ever seen, descended from the sky. Its sleek, organic lines defied both human and Trill design principles. The ship touched down in a cleared area, and a figure emerged from its depths. Even from a distance, Daniel recognized the imposing form of General Zan, the galaxy's most notorious arms dealer. "This is bad," Dr. Tucker murmured, clutching Kira closer. Daniel nodded grimly. "We can't let that weapon leave this planet. We need to sabotage it." As he formulated a plan, Daniel noticed something strange. The Nexus core was pulsing more rapidly, its glow intensifying. At the same time, Kira's skin began to shimmer with an iridescent light. Dr. Tucker gasped. "Daniel, look at this," she said, pulling out a handheld scanner. "The Nexus core is altering Kira's genetic structure. If this continues, there's no telling what she might be capable of." Before Daniel could respond, Kira's eyes snapped open. A wave of energy radiated from her tiny form, washing over Daniel and Dr. Tucker. In that instant, Daniel felt a connection forming, thoughts and images flooding his mind. He saw the outpost layout, the location of the weapon, and the weaknesses in the Syndicate's defenses. It was as if Kira was downloading tactical information directly into his brain. "We have to move now," Daniel said, his voice filled with newfound tenacity. "Kira's given us an edge, but we don't know how long it will last." As they prepared to infiltrate the outpost, the sky lit up with weapons fire. The stellar nomad burst through the clouds, pursued by a swarm of human and Trill ships. Chaos erupted in the outpost as mercenaries scrambled to defensive positions. In the confusion, Daniel saw his chance. He turned to Dr. Tucker, his expression grim. "Keep Kira safe and stay hidden. I'm going in to sabotage that weapon." Before Dr. Tucker could protest, Daniel was on the move. He slipped into the outpost, using the cloaking device and Kira's intel to avoid detection. As he neared the center of the compound where the weapon was stored, he felt a surge of energy from the Nexus core. Suddenly, every piece of technology around him flickered and died. Alarms fell silent and weapons ceased to function. In the midst of this technological blackout, Kira's voice echoed in his mind. "Now, Daniel. This is our chance." With the Syndicate forces in disarray, Daniel raced towards his target, knowing that the fate of multiple species and the galaxy itself hung in the balance. The true test of his skills, courage, and commitment was unfolding before him, with the lives of countless beings resting on his next moves. The true test of his skills, courage, and commitment was unfolding before him, with the lives of countless beings resting on his next actions. Daniel's heart raced as he sprinted towards the center of the compound, his movements fluid and purposeful. The eerie silence of the technological blackout enveloped him, broken only by the confused shouts of syndicate operatives. He navigated the maze-like corridors with uncanny precision, guided by the intel Kira had implanted in his mind. As he approached the laboratory housing the genetic destabilizer, Daniel felt the weight of the explosives in his pack. He knew he had to work quickly. The syndicate wouldn't remain in disarray for long. The laboratory door slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a cavernous room dominated by a massive apparatus. The device pulsed with an ominous, sickly green energy that made Daniel's skin crawl. He wasted no time, pulling out the explosives and moving to strategic points around the weapon. Outside, Dr. Tucker crouched in the dense foliage, cradling Kira close. She watched in amazement as the infant's body began to change before her eyes. Kira's limbs elongated, her features shifting and maturing at an alarming rate. Within minutes, the baby had transformed into a young child of about 5 years old, her eyes wide with newfound awareness. "Daniel," Kira whispered, her voice surprisingly clear. "We need to move. Now." Dr. Tucker nodded, scooping up the child in the Nexus core. They made their way towards the extraction point, the protective energy field shimmering around them. Back in the compound, Daniel had just placed the final explosive when a shout echoed through the corridor. He spun around to see a group of mercenaries led by a scarred, brutish figure, Vex, the Syndicate's most feared enforcer. "Intruder!" Vex bellowed, charging towards Daniel with surprising speed. Daniel's military training kicked in. He ducked under Vex's first swing, using the larger man's momentum against him. The narrow corridor worked to Daniel's advantage as he fended off multiple attackers, his movements precise and economical. A crackling sound filled the air as the base's systems began to flicker back to life. The manual override was working. Daniel knew his window of opportunity was closing fast. With a grunt of effort, he landed a solid blow on Vex's solar plexus, buying himself a precious few seconds. He sprinted back into the lab and, without hesitation, triggered the explosives. The resulting blast shook the entire compound. Alarms blared as smoke and debris filled the air. Daniel used the chaos to slip past the disoriented mercenaries, making a beeline for the exit. Outside, the sky had erupted into a maelstrom of laser fire and explosions. Human and Trill ships clashed above, their battle intensified by the mysterious explosion on the surface. Through this chaos, the stellar nomad wove a desperate path, Jack's expert piloting keeping them just ahead of their pursuers. Dr. Tucker and Kira had almost reached the ship when a figure emerged from the smoke of the burning compound. General Zan, his face contorted with rage, raised a weapon towards them. "Hand over the child in the core," he snarled, his finger tightening on the trigger. At that moment, Daniel burst from the treeline, tackling Zan to the ground. The two men grappled fiercely, neither willing to concede defeat. Kira stepped forward, her small form radiating an otherworldly presence. She reached out, touching both Daniel and Zan on their foreheads. In an instant, a flood of images washed over them. Visions of a peaceful future, of humans and Trill working together, contrasted sharply with scenes of devastation wrought by continued conflict. Zan's eyes widened, his grip on the weapon loosening. Daniel seized the opportunity, twisting the gun from the arms dealer's grasp and knocking him unconscious with a swift blow. "Let's go!" Jack's voice crackled over the comm. "I can't hold this position much longer." Daniel hauled the unconscious Zan over his shoulder, gesturing for Dr. Tucker and Kira to board the ship. As they scrambled up the ramp, laser fire from approaching Syndicate forces peppered the ground around them. The stellar Nomad's engines roared to life, lifting them off the surface of Viridian 3. Through the viewport, they watched as the planet's surface receded, giving way to a terrifying spectacle of space combat. Hundreds of ships, human, Trill, and Syndicate alike, filled the star-studded void with streaks of weapons fire. Jack's hands flew over the controls, His face set in grim concentration as he navigated through the chaos. "Hold on tight," he growled. "This is going to get rough." As they broke through the planet's atmosphere, a barrage of fire from multiple ships converged on their position. The stellar nomad shuddered under the assault, alarms blaring throughout the ship. Daniel strapped himself into the co-pilot seat, his eyes scanning the tactical display. "We've got multiple bogies on our tail," he reported, his voice tense but controlled. Jack nodded, his teeth gritted. "I see them. Watch this." The stellar nomad dove and rolled, narrowly avoiding a volley of missiles. Jack's piloting skills were put to the ultimate test as he wove through the debris of destroyed ships and the crossfire of ongoing battles. In the back of the ship, Dr. Tucker tended to the still unconscious, and while Kira sat cross-legged on the floor, her eyes closed in deep concentration. The Nexus core pulsed with energy in her lap, its rhythm matching the subtle glow emanating from her skin. As they pushed to the last line of combatants, a massive syndicate dreadnought loomed before them, its weapons powering up for a killing blow. "We're not going to make it," Jack muttered, his fingers tightening on the controls. Suddenly, Kira's eyes snapped open, glowing with the same energy as the Nexus core. "Yes, we will," she said, her voice resonating with power. A wave of energy burst from the ship, washing over the dreadnought. Its weapons powered down, and for a moment, it drifted aimlessly in space. "Now, Jack!" Daniel shouted. Jack didn't need to be told twice. He pushed the stellar nomad to its limits, shooting past the disabled dreadnought and into the relative safety of open space. As the sounds of battle faded behind them, the crew of the stellar nomad found themselves facing a new set of challenges. With Kira's rapidly evolving abilities, the immense power of the Nexus core, and the captured General Zan, they had become central figures in a conflict that threatened to consume the galaxy. Daniel looked back at Kira, the child's eyes meeting his with a wisdom far beyond her years. He realized that their journey was far from finished. In fact, it had only just begun. The stellar nomad streaked through space, leaving the chaos of battle behind, but the crew's respite was short-lived. Alarms blared throughout the ship as Jack wrestled with the controls. "We've got multiple system failures," he growled, his fingers flying over the console. "That lasset did more damage than I thought." Daniel unstrapped himself from the co-pilot seat, stumbling as the ship lurched. "I'll check on the others," he said, making his way to the back of the ship. In the small medical bay, Dr. Tucker was examining Kira, her eyes wide with amazement. "Daniel, you need to see this," she called as he entered. Kira sat on the examination table, her legs now long enough to dangle over the edge. Her face had lost its baby fat, replaced by the angular features of a young child. She looked up at Daniel with eyes that held wisdom far beyond her apparent years. "I'm okay," she said, her voice clear and steady. "But we're not safe yet." Before Daniel could respond, a violent shudder ran through the ship. Jack's voice crackled over the intercom, tension evident in his tone. "We've got a problem. A big one." Daniel rushed back to the cockpit, his heart sinking as he saw the massive ship that had appeared before them. Its sleek, predatory lines marked it as Trill design, but on a scale he'd never seen before. "It's the Harbinger," Jack said grimly. "Flagship of the Trill Emperor. And we're caught in its tractor beam." As the stellar nomad was inexorably pulled towards the enormous vessel, Daniel's mind raced. He thought of the unconscious General Zan in their makeshift brig, of the pulsating Nexus core, and of Kira, whose very existence seemed to be at the heart of this conflict. "Options?" Daniel asked, his voice tight. Jack shook his head. "We're outgunned and outmaneuvered. Unless you've got an ace up your sleeve, we're going in." The Harbinger's hangar bay swallowed them whole, the stellar nomad settling onto the deck with a gentle thud. As the ship's ramp lowered, Daniel turned to his crew. Whatever happens, we stick together, he said, meeting each of their eyes in turn. Kira, stay close to Dr. Tucker. Jack, keep an eye on our guest. As they descended the ramp, they were met by a contingent of Trill guards, their weapons trained on the small group. Daniel raised his hand slowly, gesturing for the others to do the same. A tall, imposing Trill stepped forward, his elaborate facial markings denoting high rank. I am Commander Vex of the Imperial Guard, he announced, his voice cold and precise. You will come with us. The Emperor waits. They were escorted through the labyrinthine corridors of the Harbinger, the ship's scale dwarfing anything Daniel had ever seen. Trill crew members stopped to stare as they passed, their eyes lingering on Kira with a mixture of awe and fear. Finally, they arrived at the bridge, a vast chamber dominated by a towering view screen. Standing before it, his back to them, was a figure that radiated power and authority. Emperor Zarkin, Commander Vex announced, I present the fugitives as ordered. The Emperor turned, and Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. Zarkin's face was a mass of intricate markings, his eyes gleaming with an intelligence that bordered on madness. So, Zarkin said, his voice surprisingly soft, you are the ones who have caused me so much trouble. His gaze fell on Kira, and a smile spread across his face. And you, my dear, are the key to everything. Kira stepped forward, her small form radiating defiance. I'm not your key, she said firmly. I'm not your anything. Zarkin's smile only widened. Oh, but you are. You are the culmination of centuries of genetic manipulation, the perfect fusion of human adaptability and Trill potential. And with the Nexus core, you will elevate our entire species to a new level of existence. He turned to Daniel, his expression hardening. You have a choice to make, human. Give me the child and the core, and I will end this war. I'll even grant you a position of power within the Empire. Refuse, and your execution will be immediate. Daniel's mind raced, searching for a way out of this impossible situation. But before he could respond, alarms began to blare throughout the bridge. The view screen flickered to life, showing a massive fleet of ships emerging from hyperspace. Emperor, a Trill officer shouted, We're under attack. It's a combined fleet of human warships and Trill vessels? Zarkin's face contorted with rage. Varric, he snarled, the traitor dares to strike at me directly? As chaos erupted on the bridge, Daniel felt a sudden pressure in his mind. He turned to see Kira, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. In an instant, he understood. She had created a telepathic link between himself, Jack, Dr. Tucker, and even the now conscious General Zan. Now! Kira's voice echoed in their minds. While they're distracted, moving as one, they sprang into action. Jack disarmed the nearest guard, tossing the weapon to Daniel. Dr. Tucker scooped up Kira, shielding her with her body. Even Zan, despite his restraints, managed to trip a Trill officer rushing towards them. They fought their way off the bridge, Kira's telepathic link allowing them to coordinate their movements with uncanny precision. As they raced through the Harbinger's corridors, they encountered both resistance and unexpected aid. A group of Trill crew members blocked their path, weapons raised. But instead of firing, their leader stepped forward. We've heard the stories, she said, her eyes fixed on Kira, of the human who adopted a Trill child. We want to help. With these unexpected allies, they made their way towards the hangar bay, fighting off Loyalist forces at every turn. As they ran, Dr. Tucker's voice cut through their shared mental link. The Nexus core, she gasped. Its energy signature is fluctuating wildly. If we don't stabilize it soon, it could unleash a catastrophic energy wave. They burst into the hangar bay, only to find Emperor Zarkin and his elite guard waiting for them. The Emperor's eyes blazed with fury as he raised his hand. energy crackling around his fingers. "Enough of this foolishness," he roared. "Give me the child and the core, or I'll destroy you all." As Zarkin's guards advanced, Kira stepped forward. The Nexus core pulsed in sync with her heartbeat, its energy flowing through her. She raised her hands, and a shimmering barrier sprang into existence between them and their pursuers. "Go!" she shouted, her voice strained with effort. "I can't hold this forever." They scrambled aboard the stellar Nomad, Jack racing to the cockpit to start the engines. As they lifted off, the hangar bay doors began to close, threatening to trap them inside. "Hold on!" Jack yelled, pushing the ship to its limits. The stellar Nomad scraped through the narrowing gap, paint and metal peeling away as they burst into open space. Behind them, the Harbinger shuddered as explosions bloomed across its hull, crippling the massive flagship. The space around them was a maelstrom of battle, human and Trill ships locked in a deadly dance. As Jack plotted a course away from the conflict, Daniel looked at his unlikely crew, a brilliant xenobiologist, a grizzled smuggler, a captured arms dealer, and a child with the power to reshape the galaxy. He knew their journey was nowhere near the end, but for now, they had survived. The stellar Nomad disappeared into the star-studded void, leaving behind a battle that would determine the fate of two civilizations. But the true war, Daniel realized, was just beginning. The stellar Nomad hurtled through space, its hull still glowing from the heat of their frantic escape. Daniel exhaled, allowing himself a moment of relief. But their reprieve was short-lived. A violent shudder ran through the ship, nearly knocking Daniel off his feet. Alarms blared as the lights flickered ominously. "Jack, what's happening?" Daniel called out, steadying himself against the bulkhead. Jack's voice crackled over the intercom, tight with tension. "Multiple system failures. That firefight did more damage than I thought. We need to set down fast." Daniel's mind raced. They were in neutral space, far from any established colonies or outposts. "Any options?" "One," Jack replied grimly. "There's an uncharted planet nearby. Sensors show it's habitable barely. It's our only shot." "Do it," Daniel ordered, bracing himself for a rough landing. The stellar Nomad broke through the planet's atmosphere, its damaged hull groaning under the strain. Jack's expert piloting kept them from burning up, but their descent was far from smooth. They skidded across the planet's surface in a spray of sand before coming to a jarring stop. As the dust settled, Daniel took stock of their situation. The ship's viewports revealed a desolate landscape of endless dunes stretching to the horizon. Two suns blazed overhead, their harsh light reflecting off the sand. "Welcome to hell," Jack muttered as he joined Daniel by the viewport. Dr. Tucker emerged from the medical bay, supporting a visibly weak Kira. "She's still changing," the doctor reported, concern etched on her face. "And the Nexus core. Its energy signature is becoming more erratic." Daniel nodded grimly. "Jack, what's our status?" The pilot ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in his voice. "Not good. We've got multiple hull breaches. The engines are shot, and life support is running on auxiliary power. We're grounded until we can make repairs." "And our supplies?" Daniel asked, already dreading the answer. "Low," Jack confirmed. "We weren't exactly prepared for an extended camping trip." Daniel took a deep breath, formulating a plan. "All right, Jack, focus on repairing the ship. Dr. Tucker, continue monitoring Kira and the core. I'll scout the area, see if there's anything we can use." As Daniel prepared to venture out, General Zen spoke up from where he was restrained. "I could help with the repairs," he offered. "I've worked on ships like this before." Daniel hesitated, studying the arms dealer's face for any sign of deception. Finally, he nodded. Jack, keep an eye on him. At the first sign of trouble. He'll be back in restraints faster than he can blink, Jack finished, his hand resting on his blaster. Donning a protective suit to shield himself from the planet's harsh environment, Daniel stepped out onto the alien world. The heat hit him immediately, even through the suit's cooling systems. He trudged through the sand, scanning for anything that might aid their survival. After hours of fruitless searching, Daniel's sensors picked up an anomaly. Pushing through his exhaustion, he crested a large dune and froze at the sight before him. Half buried in the sand were the unmistakable remains of a structure. Its architecture was unlike anything he'd ever seen, all sweeping curves and impossible angles that hurt his eyes to look at directly. Jack, he called over the comm. I've found something. Some kind of alien ruin. Be careful, Jack's voice crackled back. We've got enough problems without you waking up some ancient evil. Daniel approached the structure cautiously, his sensors probing for any signs of danger. As he neared what appeared to be an entrance, his foot caught on something hidden beneath the sand. There was a click, followed by a low hum that seemed to emanate from the very ground beneath him. Suddenly, the air before him shimmered, coalescing into a holographic figure. The image was degraded, flickering in and out of focus, but Daniel could make out a being unlike any he'd encountered before. Its voice, when it spoke, seemed to bypass his ears entirely, resonating directly in his mind. Great calamity. Must not be repeated. Failsafe hidden. Planet's core. Last hope. The message dissolved into static before cutting out entirely, leaving Daniel with more questions than answers. He stood there, mind turning from the implications of what he'd just witnessed. His comm crackled to life, Dr. Tucker's voice urgent. Daniel, you need to get back here. It's Kira. She's changing again. Daniel raced back to the ship, his discovery momentarily forgotten in the face of this new crisis. As he entered the medical bay, he stopped short. Where he had left a child, a young girl of about 10 now sat on the examination table, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Daniel, Kira said, her voice carrying a new depth of understanding. I know what we need to do. As Daniel listened to Kira's plan, involving the mysterious failsafe and a perilous journey into the planet's depths, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the precipice of something monumental. The fate of not just their small crew, but potentially the entire galaxy, now rested on the shoulders of a child who was evolving before their very eyes. With restored dedication, Daniel began preparing for their expedition into the unknown. As he gathered supplies and briefed the team, he remained unaware of the hidden dangers lurking beneath the planet's surface, dangers that would soon test them all to their very limits. Daniel's mind raced as he processed the implications of their discovery. The alien ruins, the cryptic message, and now Kira's sudden transformation. It was almost too much to comprehend. He pushed through the ship's airlock, his suit still caked with the planet's red sand. Daniel, Kira's voice, now deeper and more assured, called out to him. We need to move quickly. He burst into the medical bay, eyes widening at the sight before him. Where once sat a child, now a young girl of about 10 years old looked back at him, her eyes pulsing with an otherworldly glow. Kira, he breathed, what's happening to you? Dr. Tucker stepped forward, her face a mixture of awe and concern. Her cellular structure is in a constant state of flux. The Nexus core's energy is accelerating her growth at an exponential rate. Kira slid off the examination table, her movements fluid and purposeful. I can sense it now, Daniel. The failsafe, the planet's core, they're all connected. We need to find it before it's too late. A violent tremor shook the ship, nearly knocking them off their feet. Jack's voice crackled over the intercom. We've got company. Multiple ships entering the atmosphere. Looks like a mix of human and Trill vessels. Daniel's heart sank. They were out of time. "Jack, how close are we to getting airborne?" he asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't be good. "Not even close," Jack replied, frustration evident in his voice. "We're sitting ducks here." Another tremor rocked the ship, stronger this time. Daniel steadied himself against the bulkhead, his mind racing through their limited options. "We need to move," he decided. "If we stay here, we're dead. Our only chance is to find that failsafe and hope it can get us off this rock." General Zan, who had been silently observing until now, spoke up. "I know those ships. They're Galactic Syndicate. If they're here, it means Commander Drex is involved." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "And how exactly do you know that?" Zan met his gaze unflinchingly. "Because I've worked with them before. And right now, that knowledge might be the only thing keeping us alive." Before Daniel could respond, Kira gasped, her eyes glowing brighter. "They're here for the core. And something else. Something beneath the surface." Dr. Tucker placed a steadying hand on Kira's shoulder. "What do you mean? What's beneath the surface?" Kira's voice took on an almost trance-like quality. "A weapon. Massive. It could reshape the galaxy. But it needs power. It needs the planet's core." The implications hit Daniel like a physical blow. If the Syndicate got their hands on a weapon of that magnitude, the war between humans and Trill would be the least of their problems. "We need to move. Now," Daniel ordered. "Jack, finish what repairs you can. Be ready to lift off at a moment's notice. The rest of us are going underground." As they gathered supplies and prepared to venture into the alien ruins, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap, but with enemies closing in from above and an unstable planet beneath their feet. They were out of options. They slipped out of the ship under the cover of a sandstorm, the twin suns hidden behind swirling clouds of red dust. Kira led the way, her connection to the Nexus core guiding them through the desolate landscape. As they approached the ruins Daniel had discovered earlier, Kira stopped abruptly. Her hand hovered over a seemingly random patch of sand. "Here," she said, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. The ground beneath them shuddered, and a hidden entrance revealed itself. Ancient mechanisms ground to life, opening a passage into the planet's depths. Daniel exchanged glances with his unlikely team, a xenobiologist, an arms dealer, and a child with the power to reshape reality. Whatever lay ahead, he knew their lives would never be the same. With a deep breath, he stepped into the darkness, the others close behind. The passage sealed shut behind them, cutting off the howling wind and leaving them in eerie silence. As they descended into the planet's depths, the walls around them came to life with pulsing bioluminescent patterns. Dr. Tucker ran her hand along the surface, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her fear. "Fascinating," she murmured. "These patterns, they're not random. It's almost like a language." Zan, bringing up the rear, kept glancing nervously over his shoulder. "We should keep moving. It won't take Drex's forces long to find the entrance." They pressed on, the passage gradually widening into a vast underground cavern. The sight that greeted them left them speechless. Stretching out before them was an alien city, its architecture defying the laws of physics. Sweeping arches and impossible angles created a landscape that hurt the eyes to look at directly. Kira stepped forward, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's beautiful," she whispered. A distant rumble shook dust from the cavern ceiling, reminding them of the precarious situation above. Daniel forced himself to focus on the task at hand. "Kira, can you sense where we need to go?" he asked. She nodded, pointing towards a massive structure at the center of the alien city. "There, the failsafe is there." As they made their way through the deserted streets, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Shadows seemed to move at the corners of his vision, always disappearing when he turned to look. They reached the central structure, its entrance sealed by an intricate locking mechanism. Kira approached it, her hand outstretched. The Nexus core pulsed in sync with her heartbeat, its energy flowing through her and into the ancient technology. With a groan of protesting metal, the door began to open, but as it did, alarms blared to life throughout the cavern. The ground shook violently, nearly knocking them off their feet. "What's happening?" Dr. Tucker shouted over the din. Kira's eyes were wide with fear. "We've triggered something. The failsafe. It's awakening." As if in response to her words, a massive form began to rise from the depths of the planet. It was a biomechanical construct of staggering proportions. Its insectoid features a chilling echo of the fossilized remains they had encountered earlier. The failsafe had awakened, and with it, the true test of their survival was about to begin. The ground beneath their feet trembled violently, nearly throwing them off balance. Daniel's eyes widened as he realized the true nature of the situation. "We need to split up," he shouted over the din of alarms and rumbling earth. "Dr. Tucker, take Kira back to the Stellar Nomad. Jack needs you there." Dr. Tucker nodded, grabbing Kira's hand. "What about you?" Daniel's gaze locked onto Zan, who was edging away from the group. "I'm going after him. He has information we need." Before anyone could protest, Daniel sprinted after the retreating arms dealer. The ancient city shook around them, structures crumbling and collapsing as they raced through the winding streets. "Zan!" Daniel called out, ducking under a falling archway. "Stop! We don't have time for this." But the general was already disappearing into the depths of the Syndicate base. Daniel gritted his teeth and pressed on, the weight of his decision heavy on his shoulders. The information Zan carried could be the key to ending the human Trill War, and he couldn't let it slip away. As Daniel navigated the maze-like corridors of the base, he could hear the distant sounds of panic and chaos. Syndicate soldiers scrambled to evacuate, paying him little attention in their rush to escape. Sparks flew from malfunctioning consoles, and emergency lights bathed everything in an eerie red glow. Suddenly, a massive tremor shook the entire structure. Daniel stumbled, catching himself against a wall as the floor beneath him groaned ominously. He spotted Zan ahead, fumbling with the security panel. "It's over, Zan!" Daniel shouted, closing the distance between them. "Give me the data. We can still get out of here alive." Zan turned, his face a mask of desperation. "You don't understand, Daniel. If I don't deliver this to Commander Drex, I'm as good as dead anyway." Before Daniel could respond, the floor gave way beneath them with a sickening crack. They plummeted into darkness, surrounded by falling debris and the screeching of tearing metal. Daniel hit the ground hard, the impact knocking the wind out of him. He lay there for a moment dazed before forcing himself to his feet. As his eyes adjusted to the dim light, he gasped. They had fallen into a massive chamber, far larger than anything they had seen in the alien city above. At its center stood a colossal biomechanical construct, its insectoid features eerily reminiscent of the fossilized remains they had encountered earlier. As Daniel watched, the construct's eyes flickered to life, pulsing with an otherworldly energy. "The failsafe," he whispered, the ancient holographic message echoing in his mind. A groan from nearby drew his attention. Zen was pinned beneath a fallen beam, struggling to free himself. Daniel moved to help him, but froze as a new voice cut through the chamber. "I must say, I'm impressed by your persistence, Daniel." Commander Drex stepped out from behind the failsafe construct, his cybernetic enhancements gleaming in the low light. He held a strange device in his hand, its surface covered in pulsing lights. "What are you doing here, Drex?" Daniel demanded, his hand inching towards his blaster. Drex smiled, a cold, calculated expression. I'm here to claim my prize. This failsafe isn't just a weapon. It's the key to reshaping the galaxy. As if in response to his words, the construct began to power up, its massive form humming with energy. Daniel could feel the raw power emanating from it, setting his teeth on edge. You don't know what you're dealing with, Daniel warned, taking a step forward. This thing was designed to contain the Nexus core. It could destroy the entire planet. Drex's smile widened. Exactly. And with my genetic manipulation device, I can harness that power for myself. The chamber shook violently, chunks of ceiling crashing down around them. Daniel realized with growing horror that the failsafe's activation was tearing the planet apart. Meanwhile, on the planet's surface, Kira and Dr. Tucker fought their way through the collapsing alien city. The girl's newly enhanced abilities allowed her to predict and avoid danger with uncanny accuracy. This way, Kira called out, pulling Dr. Tucker down a narrow alley moments before a building collapsed where they had been standing. As they emerged from the city's outskirts, they saw the stellar nomad in the distance. But between them and safety stood a group of Syndicate soldiers, weapons trained on the ship. Jack's voice crackled over their comms. Could use some help out here. These guys don't seem to understand the concept of planetary destruction. Kira's eyes glowed with an inner light. I have an idea, she said, her voice carrying a confidence far beyond her apparent years. Before Dr. Tucker could stop her, Kira stepped forward, raising her hands. The air around her shimmered, and suddenly the soldiers found themselves facing illusory copies of the stellar nomad crew, each armed and ready for a fight. In the confusion that followed, Jack managed to take out several of the distracted soldiers. Dr. Tucker and Kira used the opportunity to make a break for the ship. As they raced up the boarding ramp, Kira suddenly stumbled, her eyes wide with fear. Daniel, she gasped. He's in trouble. We have to help him. Dr. Tucker hesitated, torn between the need to escape and the urge to save their friend. But as the planet's surface began to crack and split beneath them, she made her decision. Jack, she called out as they entered the ship. We need to get to Daniel. Now! In the underground chamber, Daniel faced off against Drex, the failsafe construct looming over them like a silent judge. Zan, finally free from the debris, looked between them with growing panic. You're making a mistake, Drex, Daniel said, trying to reason with the commander. This power isn't meant to be controlled. It'll destroy everything, including you. Drex laughed, raising his control device. You underestimate me, Daniel. I've prepared for this moment for years. The galaxy will bow to my will, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. As Drex moved to interface with the failsafe, the chamber shuddered violently. The construct's eyes flared with blinding intensity, and Daniel felt a surge of energy unlike anything he had ever experienced. In that moment, he knew they had run out of time. The failsafe was awakening, and with it, the fate of the entire planet, and perhaps the galaxy, hung in the balance. Balance hung in the balance. The failsafe's energy surge intensified, threatening to tear the planet apart. Suddenly, the chamber shook violently as a familiar shape burst through the crumbling ceiling. The stellar nomad descended, its hull scorched and battered. The ship's boarding ramp extended, revealing Jack at the controls. Time to go, he shouted over the comm. Daniel didn't hesitate. He grabbed the still-dazed Zan and sprinted for the ship. Drex, caught off guard by the sudden arrival, fumbled with his control device. No! The commander roared as Daniel and Zan leapt onto the ramp. The failsafe construct's eyes flared with blinding intensity. Energy crackled around it, arcing towards Drex's device. The commander screamed as the power overwhelmed him, his cybernetic enhancements overloading in a shower of sparks. As the ramp closed behind them, Daniel caught a final glimpse of the chamber. The failsafe was fully awakened now, its massive form pulsing with otherworldly energy. The planet's core trembled beneath them, the very fabric of reality seeming to warp and twist. "Jack, get us out of here," Daniel shouted as he stumbled into the cockpit. The pilot didn't need to be told twice. With a roar of engines, the stellar nomad shot upwards, weaving through collapsing structures and debris. The ship emerged from the planet's atmosphere just as XR-27 began to break apart, massive fissures splitting its surface. Daniel watched in stunned silence as the planet imploded, the failsafe's power collapsing in on itself. The shockwave hit them hard, sending the stellar nomad tumbling through space. Alarms blared throughout the ship as Jack fought to regain control. "We're leaking atmosphere," Dr. Tucker called out from the engine room. "Multiple hull breaches." Daniel gripped the back of Jack's chair, his fist clenched. "Can we make it?" Jack's face was grim as he wrestled with the controls. "I don't know, but we're about to find out." The stellar nomad limped through space, its systems flickering and sputtering. Daniel could hear the groaning of stressed metal all around them. They needed repairs and fast. "We can't keep flying like this," he said, scanning the star charts. "We need somewhere to land, somewhere to make repairs." Zan, who had been silent since their escape, spoke up. "I might know a place, Omega Station. It's not far from here." Daniel turned to the arms dealer, his eyes narrowing. "Omega Station? That's a hub for outlaws and mercenaries." Zan shrugged. "Exactly. No one asks questions there. It's our best chance for repairs without getting caught." As much as Daniel hated to admit it, Zan was right. They were out of options. He nodded to Jack. "Set a course for Omega Station. And keep an eye on our new friend here." The journey to Omega Station was tense. The ship's damaged systems threatened to give out at any moment, and the aftermath of XR-27's destruction burdened immensely on everyone's minds. Kira, her powers still fluctuating, spent most of the time in deep meditation, trying to regain control. As they approached the station, its true nature became clear. Omega Station was a sprawling construct of mismatched modules and improvised structures, a hive of activity on the fringes of known space. Neon signs flickered in dozens of languages, advertising everything from black market cybernetics to exotic alien beverages. Jack expertly guided the stellar nomad into a docking bay, the ship's hull scraping against the bay walls as it settled. Daniel took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. "All right, here's the plan," he said, addressing the crew. "Jack, you and Dr. Tucker focus on getting the parts we need for repairs. I'll take Kira and see if we can gather some intel on safe locations. We need to lay low and plan our next move." Dr. Tucker frowned. "What about Drex?" Daniel glanced at the secure door leading to the ship's brig. "He stays here. The ship's security systems should keep him contained." As they prepared to disembark, Daniel pulled Zan aside. "I'm trusting you not to run off or sell us out. Remember, we're all in this together now." Zan nodded, his expression unreadable. "Don't worry, I know which side my bread is buttered on. For now, at least." Daniel and Kira stepped out into the crowded corridors of Omega Station, immediately assaulted by a cacophony of sounds, smells, and sights. Aliens of species Daniel had never seen before pushed past them, engaged in rapid-fire negotiations and furtive exchanges. Kira stayed close to Daniel, her eyes wide as she took in the sensory overload. "I can feel so much here," she whispered. "So many minds, so many intentions." Daniel placed a protective hand on her shoulder. "Stay focused, Kira. We need to keep a low profile and gather information." As they made their way deeper into the station, Daniel caught snippets of conversations about the growing tensions between humans and Trill. News of XR-27's destruction had spread quickly, along with wild rumors about a weapon of unimaginable power. "They're talking about us," Kira said quietly. "About what happened on the planet." Daniel nodded grimly, "Which means we need to be extra careful. Let's find somewhere quieter to." He broke off as a grizzled, one-eyed human stepped into their path. The man's cybernetic I whirred as it focused on Daniel's face. Well, the stranger said, his voice a gravelly rumble. "Looks like today's my lucky day. Name's Vance Blackthorne, and I believe you and I have some business to discuss." Daniel tensed, his hand inching towards his concealed weapon. "I don't know what you're talking about." Vance grinned, revealing a mouthful of metallic teeth. "Oh, I think you do. Your face is plastered all over the station's wanted boards. But don't worry, I'm not here to turn you in. I've got a proposition for you." Before Daniel could respond, a distant explosion rocked the station. Alarms began to blare, and the crowd around them erupted into panic. Vance's grin widened. "Looks like things are about to get interesting. What do you say we continue this conversation somewhere a bit more private?" Daniel hesitated, weighing their options. With chaos erupting around them and potential enemies closing in, he realized they might need all the help they could get. "Lead the way," he said, keeping a firm grip on Kira's hand as they followed Vance into the depths of Omega Station. Daniel followed Vance through the chaotic corridors of Omega Station, his hand firmly grasping Kira's. The distant explosion had triggered a stampede, with beings of all species pushing and shoving to escape the unknown threat. "This way," Vance called over his shoulder, leading them down a narrow side passage. "I know a shortcut to my safe house." As they navigated the labyrinthine station, Daniel's calm crackled to life. Jack's voice came through, strained and urgent. "Daniel, we've got a problem. The stellar nomad systems are failing faster than we thought. We need to get out of here now." Daniel cursed under his breath. "Understood. We're working on it. Stand by." They emerged into a less crowded area, and Vance ushered them into a small, unmarked door. Inside was a compact command center, filled with screens displaying various parts of the station. "Welcome to my humble abode," Vance said, activating a series of holographic displays. "Now, let's see what we're dealing with." One of the screens showed the docking bay where the stellar nomad was berthed. Smoke billowed from several hull breaches, and sparks flew from exposed circuitry. "Your ship's in bad shape," Vance observed, "but I might know a way out of this mess." He pulled up a star chart, zooming in on a dense cluster of gases and debris. The Crimson Nebula. "It's not far from here, and it's the perfect place to lose any pursuers." Daniel studied the map, his brow furrowed. "That looks more like a death trap than an escape route." Vance grinned, his cybernetic eye whirring as it focused on Daniel. "That's why it's perfect. No one in their right mind would follow you in there." Before Daniel could respond, Kira gasped, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "The nebula," she whispered. "I can see it. It's calling to me." Daniel exchanged a worried glance with Vance. "Kira, what do you mean?" The girl's voice took on an eerie, echoing quality. "There's something there, something ancient, something connected to the Nexus core." Vance raised an eyebrow. "Well, that settles it. Looks like fate's pointing you towards a nebula." Daniel nodded grimly. "All right. Let's get back to the ship and make a run for it." As they prepared to leave, alarms blared throughout the station. A booming voice echoed through the corridors. "Attention all personnel. Multiple unidentified vessels approaching. This is not a drill. Prepare for possible hostile engagement." Vance cursed. "Looks like your friends caught up with you faster than I expected." We need to move now. They raced through the station, dodging panicked crowds and security patrols. As they approached the docking bay, Daniel saw Jack and Dr. Tucker frantically working on the stellar Nomad's external systems. "Jack," Daniel called out, "we need to leave immediately. Plot a course for the Crimson Nebula." The pilot's eyes widened. "The Crimson Nebula? Are you insane?" "Probably," Daniel admitted, "but it's our only chance." "Can you do it?" Jack nodded, a determined glint in his eye. "I can fly anything anywhere, but it won't be pretty." As they boarded the ship, Daniel turned to Vance. "Thanks for your help. We're even now." Vance chuckled. "Not quite. I'm coming with you." Daniel started to protest, but another explosion rocked the station. "Fine," he growled, "but any funny business, and you're taking a short walk out the airlock." The stellar Nomad's engines roared to life, systems sputtering and alarms blaring. Jack's hands flew over the controls, coaxing every ounce of power from the damaged ship. They burst out of the docking bay just as a salvo of energy weapons struck Omega Station. The pursuing ships, a mix of Trill, human, and unknown designs, immediately changed course to intercept them. "Hang on!" Jack shouted. "This is going to get rough." The stellar Nomad plunged into the swirling gases of the Crimson Nebula. Visibility dropped to near zero, and the ship's sensors struggled to penetrate the dense cosmic soup. Daniel gripped his seat as the ship bucked and rolled. "Jack, status report." "Not good," the pilot called back. "We're flying blind, and the nebula's playing havoc with our systems. I'm not sure how long we can keep this up." In the engine room, Dr. Tucker worked feverishly to keep the ship's core from overloading. The Nexus core pulsed with increasing intensity, its energy patterns shifting in response to the nebula's strange properties. Kira sat in silent meditation, her face a mask of concentration. Suddenly, her eyes snapped open. "There," she pointed. "Head for that clearing in the gas." Jack hesitated for a split second, then made the course correction. The stellar Nomad burst through a wall of crimson gas into a relatively clear pocket of space. And there, nestled among asteroids and cosmic debris, was a massive space station. "The Nexus hub," Vance breathed, his cybernetic eyes zooming in on the structure. "I thought it was just a legend." As they approached the station, its advanced shielding shimmered into visibility. A transmission crackled through their comms. "Unidentified vessel, you have entered restricted space. State your business or be destroyed." Daniel took a deep breath, knowing their next words could mean the difference between salvation and annihilation. "This is Daniel Chun of the Stellar Nomad. We seek asylum and urgent assistance. We carry sensitive cargo that requires your expertise." There was a long pause, during which the crew held their collective breath. Finally, the voice responded. "Stellar Nomad, you are cleared for docking in Bay 7. Be advised, any hostile action will be met with lethal force." As Jack guided the battered ship towards the indicated bay, Daniel turned to his crew. "All right, everyone, we're not out of the woods yet. Be on your guard, and let's hope we can find the answers we need here." The stellar Nomad settled into the docking bay with a groan of stressed metal. As the airlock cycled, Daniel prepared himself for whatever challenges lay ahead on the mysterious Nexus hub. As the airlock hissed open, Daniel and his crew stepped into a world of advanced technology and barely held back chaos. Alarms blared throughout the station, and the crew could hear the distant sound of weapons fire. Dr. Lyra Vex, a tall woman with piercing green eyes and silver hair, met them at the entrance. "Welcome to the Nexus hub," she said, her voice tense. "I'm afraid you've arrived at a rather inopportune moment." Before Daniel could respond, the station shuddered violently. Dr. Vex's comm device chirped, and a holographic display sprang to life, showing multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace around the station. Trill Imperial vessels, human military cruisers, and something else, Dr. Vex muttered, her fingers dancing across the display. This is not good. Daniel exchanged worried glances with his crew. Dr. Vex, we need your help. We have information that could potentially end this conflict, but we need to get it out to all factions simultaneously. Dr. Vex's eyes widened with interest. You're proposing we use our communication array for a system-wide broadcast? That's ambitious and dangerous. As they spoke, the station's defensive shields flickered to life, a shimmering barrier separating them from the encroaching threat. An automated voice echoed through the corridors. Emergency lockdown initiated. All personnel report to designated safe zones. Jack stepped forward, his eyes darting between Daniel and Dr. Vex. Look, I don't mean to interrupt, but the Nomad needs repairs fast. If we're going to have any chance of getting out of here alive, we need to start now. Vance nodded in agreement. I can help with that. I've got some experience with ship modifications that might come in handy. Daniel made a split-second decision. All right, Jack, you and Vance get to work on the Nomad. Dr. Tucker, I need you to keep monitoring Drex's condition. Kira, stay close to me. He turned back to Dr. Vex. Can you take us to the communication array? Dr. Vex hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Follow me. But I must warn you, if we do this, we'll be painting a target on our backs for every faction out there. As they hurried through the station's winding corridors, the sounds of battle grew louder. Through viewports, they could see energy weapons flashing against the station's shields. Kira suddenly stumbled, her eyes glowing with an ethereal light. Daniel, she gasped, I can feel it. The core, it's changing me. Daniel steadied her, noticing with shock that she now appeared several years older than when they'd first met. Hang in there, Kira. We're going to figure this out. They reached the communication center, a vast room filled with holographic displays and humming equipment. Dr. Vex quickly brought the systems online, her fingers flying over the controls. We're ready, she announced. But I should warn you, we're detecting multiple breaches in our outer defenses. We don't have much time. Daniel took a deep breath, preparing to address the galaxy, when Kira suddenly cried out in pain. Her body began to emit pulses of energy, eerily similar to those of the Nexus core. Daniel, she said, her voice strained, I saw it. The ancient civilization, their downfall. The core has a failsafe. It needs multiple species to activate its true potential. And I'm the key. Before Daniel could process this information, the station rocked with a massive explosion. Alarms blared even louder, and Dr. Vex's comm device lit up with urgent messages. We've been breached, she shouted over the noise. Trill forces on Deck 7, human operatives on Deck 3, and Syndicate mercenaries approaching our position. Daniel's mind raced, weighing their options. The broadcast could potentially end the war, but it would also reveal their location to every hostile force in the sector. The stellar Nomad might be ready for departure, but breaking through the blockade seemed nearly impossible. As if reading his thoughts, Dr. Vex spoke up. There's one more option. We have a prototype long-range teleportation device. It could transport you to safety, but it needs time to power up. The sound of weapons fire grew closer. Daniel could see the fear and dedication in the eyes of his crew, each of them looking to him for direction. Kira stepped forward, her body still pulsing with energy. I have an idea, she said, her voice stronger than before. I can use my connection to the core to create an energy field around the station. It would disrupt their weapons and ships, buy us some time. But I don't know what it will do to me. Daniel felt the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. The next decision he made would shape not just their fate, but potentially the future of entire civilizations. As enemy forces converged on their position, he knew he had only moments to choose their path. The communication array hummed, ready to broadcast the truth to the stars. The stellar nomad waited in its bay, Vance's untested stealth technology offering a slim chance at escape. And Kira stood before him, power radiating from her very being, prepared to risk everything to protect them. In the distance, Daniel heard the unmistakable sound of a breaching charge being set on the communication center's doors. Time had run out. He had to decide now. And now he had to act. "Dr. Vex, start the broadcast," Daniel commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Kira, we need that energy field. Can you do it?" Kira nodded, her eyes glowing with newfound power. "I'm ready." As Dr. Vex's fingers flew over the controls, initializing the communication array, Daniel guided Kira towards the station's central chamber. The sound of weapon fire grew closer, punctuated by the screeching of metal as the enemy forces breached another level. They reached the chamber just as Kira's body began to pulse with energy. She stepped into the center, her form now resembling that of a young woman rather than the girl Daniel had first met. "Focus, Kira," Daniel urged, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Channel the core's energy through you." Kira closed her eyes, her brow furrowing in concentration. Suddenly, a wave of energy burst from her body, expanding outward in a shimmering sphere. The station shuddered as the field encompassed it entirely. Through the viewport, Daniel watched as the attacking ships suddenly lost power, their weapons falling silent and engines sputtering out. A temporary calm descended upon the battlefield. "Field stabilized," Kira said, her voice echoing with an otherworldly resonance. "But I don't know how long I can hold it." Daniel nodded, then spoke into his communicator. "Dr. Vex, we're ready. Begin the broadcast." Back in the communication center, Dr. Vex activated the array. The truth about the war, the Syndicate's manipulations, and the nature of the Nexus core began streaming out to every corner of the galaxy. As the broadcast continued, Daniel's communicator crackled to life. "Boss," Jack's voice came through, tinged with excitement and worry. "The Nomad's ready. Vance and I managed to integrate his stealth tech. It's untested, but it might just get us past that blockade." Before Daniel could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Dr. Tucker's panicked voice cut through the noise. "Daniel, Drex has escaped. His body's emitting energy similar to the core. He's heading your way." Daniel cursed under his breath. He turned to see Kira straining to maintain the energy field, her form starting to flicker and destabilize. "Jack," Daniel called into his communicator, "we need you at the main power core. A group of Trill loyalists is attempting to shut down the broadcast." "On it, boss," Jack replied, the sound of his footsteps already echoing through the comm. Suddenly, the station rocked violently. Through the viewport, Daniel saw a massive ship emerge from hyperspace, dwarfing even the largest vessels in the blockade. "Unidentified vessel." A voice boomed through the station's speakers. "This is a progenitor. We demand immediate access to the Nexus core." Daniel's mind raced, trying to process this new development. But before he could formulate a response, the chamber doors burst open. Commander Drex stood in the doorway, his body crackling with energy, eyes fixed on Kira. "The core," Drex growled, his voice distorted. "I can feel its power. It's calling to me." As Drex advanced, Daniel positioned himself between the transformed commander and Kira. He could feel the energy radiating off both of them, the air thick with tension and raw power. "Drex, stand down," Daniel said, his hand inching towards his weapon. "You don't understand what's happening here." Drex laughed, a sound that sent chills down Daniel's spine. Oh, but I do, Chin. I understand more than you could possibly imagine. As the two men faced off, Kira's energy field began to flicker dangerously. Dr. Tucker's voice came through the comm once more, urgent and frightened. Daniel, Kira's molecular structure is destabilizing. If we don't find a way to stabilize her soon, we might lose her entirely. The station shuddered again as the progenitor ship attempted to dock. Alarms blared, warning of multiple hull breaches. In the distance, Daniel could hear the sound of Jack engaging the Trill loyalists at the main power core. With Drex advancing, Kira faltering, and threats closing in from all sides, Daniel knew the next few moments would determine not just their fate, but the future of the entire galaxy. He tensed, ready to act, knowing that whatever he decided would change everything. Everything would change. Daniel's muscles tensed as he prepared to face the advancing Drex. Suddenly, a plan crystallized in Daniel's mind. He tapped his communicator, speaking rapidly. Dr. Tucker, we need to stabilize Kira. Can you modify the medical bay equipment to create a containment field for her energy signature? I'll get on it right away. Dr. Tucker's voice crackled through the comm. But Daniel, I'll need time. Do what you can, Daniel replied, his eyes never leaving Drex. We'll buy you that time. As Drex advanced, crackling with energy, Daniel activated the station's emergency containment protocols. Blast doors slammed shut throughout the Nexus hub, sealing off sections and limiting Drex's mobility. You can't stop what's coming, Chin, Drex growled, his distorted voice echoing off the walls. The core's power is beyond your comprehension. Daniel backed away, leading Drex away from Kira. Maybe so, Drex, but I understand enough to know it's not meant for any one person or species to control. As they maneuvered through the station's corridors, alarms blared, warning of multiple hull breaches. The station shuddered as the massive progenitor ship attempted to dock. Daniel's comm crackled to life again. Boss! Jack's voice came through, punctuated by the sound of weapons fire. I've engaged the Trill loyalists at the main power core. It's getting hairy down here. Hold them off, Jack, Daniel ordered, ducking as Drex hurled a bolt of energy at him. We can't let them shut down the broadcast. As Daniel led Drex on a chase through the station, Dr. Vex's voice cut through the chaos. Daniel, the progenitor ship is transmitting data packets to our central computer. I'm decoding them now, but this is incredible. It contains instructions for harnessing the core's power safely. Daniel's mind raced, formulating a plan. Dr. Vex, work on implementing those instructions. We need to stabilize the core and Kira. He tapped his comm again. Vance, prep the Nomad for immediate departure. We might need to make a quick exit. As Daniel continued to evade Drex, he caught glimpses through the viewports of the escalating battle outside. The Galactic Syndicate forces had launched an attack on the hub's shield generators, adding to the chaos. Suddenly, the station's gravity shifted, nearly throwing Daniel off his feet. He used the momentary disorientation to his advantage, activating a nearby control panel to seal off another section, further limiting Drex's movements. You're only delaying the inevitable, Chin, Drex snarled, his body pulsing with energy. The core's power will be mine. Daniel ducked into a maintenance shaft, buying himself a moment to catch his breath. He could feel the station trembling around him, systems straining under the combined assault from within and without. His comm crackled once more. Daniel! Dr. Tucker's voice came through, tinged with excitement and worry. I've modified the medical bay equipment. We're ready to attempt stabilizing Kira, but we need to get her here now. Before Daniel could respond, a massive tremor shook the station. Through a nearby viewport, he saw the progenitor ship extend an energy field around the Nexus hub. Instantly, the weapon's fire outside ceased, creating an eerie silence. Taking advantage of the momentary calm, Daniel sprinted towards the central chamber where he had left Kira. As he ran, he coordinated with Dr. Vex and Dr. Tucker, formulating a plan to stabilize both Kira and the core. He burst into the chamber just as Drex broke through the final containment barrier. Kira stood at the center, her form flickering dangerously. "It's over, Drex," Daniel said, positioning himself between Drex and Kira. "The progenitor's instructions are the key to unlocking the core's true potential. It was never meant to be a weapon." Drex hesitated, confusion flashing across his face. In that moment of uncertainty, Daniel acted. He activated the station's gravity controls, increasing the localized gravity around Drex tenfold. The transformed commander crashed to the floor, momentarily immobilized by the crushing force. "Kira," Daniel called out, extending his hand. "We need to get you to the medical bay. Dr. Tucker has a way to stabilize your condition." Kira nodded, her form wavering as she took a step forward. As they moved towards the exit, Daniel kept a wary eye on Drex, who was already beginning to push against the increased gravity. They raced through the corridors, the station groaning around them as the temporary ceasefire outside began to fracture. Daniel could hear the distant sound of weapons being reactivated, the brief peace already giving way to renewed hostilities. As they entered the medical bay, Dr. Tucker sprang into action, guiding Kira towards the modified containment field. "This should stabilize your energy signature," he explained, activating the device. A shimmering field enveloped Kira, and her flickering form began to steady. Daniel breathed a sigh of relief, but he knew their challenges were a long way to go. "Dr. Vex," he called into his comm. "How close are we to implementing the progenitor's instructions?" "We're almost there," she replied, her voice tense with concentration. "But Daniel, there's something else. The data indicates that Kira's unique genetic makeup is crucial to unlocking the core's true potential. It's not just about power. It's about fostering peace and understanding among different species." Daniel looked at Kira, seeing her in a new light. She met his gaze, a mix of fear and perseverance in her eyes. "What do we need to do?" Daniel asked, his mind already racing ahead to the next steps. Before Dr. Vex could respond, the station rocked violently. Outside, the temporary peace had shattered completely, with various factions resuming their assault on the Nexus hub. Daniel steadied himself against the console, knowing that their window of opportunity was rapidly closing. They needed to act now, to harness the core's power for its true purpose before it was too late. As alarms blared and the station shuddered under renewed attacks, Daniel prepared to make the most crucial decision of his life. The fate of not just their small group, but potentially the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. With Kira stabilized and the progenitor's instructions at hand, they stood on the precipice of a momentous discovery. Daniel took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. "Dr. Vex, begin the final sequence. We're going to activate the core using Kira's genetic key." As the ancient technology began to power up, its true purpose about to be revealed, Daniel couldn't help but wonder what consequences this action would unleash upon the galaxy. The hum of energy filled the air, growing in intensity as they stood on the brink of a new era. The hum of energy filled the air, growing in intensity as they stood on the brink of a new dawn for the galaxy. Daniel's finger hovered over the activation switch, his heart pounding in his chest. He glanced at Kira, who nodded solemnly, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and perseverance. "Here goes everything," Daniel muttered, pressing the switch. The Nexus hub shuddered violently, the floor vibrating beneath their feet. A blinding light erupted from the core, engulfing Kira in its radiance. Daniel shielded his eyes, squinting against the glare. Kira gasped, her body lifting off the ground as tendrils of energy coursed through her. Her previously unstable form began to solidify, emitting a soft, pulsating glow. Suddenly, the station's viewports flickered to life, displaying the chaotic scene outside. The temporary ceasefire had shattered, with various factions preparing to resume their assault on the Nexus hub. Before anyone could react, the massive progenitor ship sprang into action. It extended its energy field, encompassing not only the Nexus hub but also the surrounding vessels. The attacking ships froze mid-maneuver, caught in the ancient vessel's immobilizing beam. "What's happening?" Dr. Tucker exclaimed, his eyes wide as he stared at the screens. Before Daniel could respond, every display in the station lit up with streams of data. Dr. Vex's voice crackled over the comm, filled with awe. "The progenitor ship is transmitting data to everyone, us, the attacking vessels, everyone." As the data transfer completed, the Nexus core pulsed with newfound power. The energy radiating from Kira intensified, spreading throughout the station in waves of shimmering light. Daniel felt a sudden shift in his perception. His mind expanded, filled with a flood of emotions and memories that weren't his own. He saw flashes of Kira's life, her childhood as a Trill Royal, the fear and confusion as she was hidden away, the weight of an ancient prophecy bearing down on her young shoulders. Around him, he could sense the same thing happening to others. The hostile forces aboard the station stumbled, their weapons clattering to the floor as they clutched their heads, overwhelmed by the sudden influx of shared experiences. Through the viewports, Daniel watched as the immobilized ships outside experienced the same phenomenon. On the Trill flagship, Emperor Zarkin fell to his knees, his face contorted with the weight of countless war-torn memories. "All Trill forces, cease fire immediately." Zarkin's voice boomed across all channels, thick with emotion. "I repeat, cease all hostilities against the humans." Moments later, Colonel Hawk's voice joined the Emperor's. "Human forces, stand down. I say again, stand down." The Galactic Syndicate ships, their manipulations exposed, began powering down their weapon systems. Across all frequencies, reports of mass surrenders flooded in. In the modified stasis field, Commander Drex's body convulsed as the Nexus core's energy interacted with his altered physiology. His eyes snapped open, filled with a new awareness as he absorbed the collective experiences of both humans and Trill. "Daniel," Kira called out, her voice resonating with power. "It's working. The core, it's doing what it was meant to do." As the initial wave of empathy began to subside, a new signal cut through the chaos. The progenitor ship initiated communication with the Nexus hub and the leaders of the various factions. A holographic figure materialized in the center of the room, a being of indeterminate species, its form shifting and flowing like liquid light. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Children of the stars," the being intoned, "we are the progenitors. Eons ago, we seeded life throughout this galaxy, nurturing the development of diverse species. The Nexus core and the one you call Kira are integral parts of our plan to foster peace and understanding among our offspring." The being turned its gaze to Daniel. "You have done well in bringing this plan to fruition, but your task is not yet complete. We extend an invitation to all faction leaders to convene aboard the Nexus hub for peace negotiations." As the hologram faded, Daniel's calm crackled to life. "Boss," Jack's voice came through, tinged with excitement and worry. "The Nomad's ready if we need to make a quick exit. But there's something else. We're picking up some strange energy readings from the edge of the system. I think we've got company coming." Dr. Vex's voice joined in. "Daniel, the core's activation has set off a chain reaction. We're detecting signals from previously unknown regions of space. It seems we've drawn the attention of other alien races, possibly more children of the progenitors." Daniel took a deep breath, steadying himself against the console. The immediate threat of war had been averted, but new challenges loomed on the horizon. As he watched Emperor Zarkin, Colonel Hawk, and other faction leaders begin to board the Nexus hub for the impending negotiations, he knew that the fate of the galactic realm now hung in a delicate balance. With Kira at his side, her body still pulsing with the core's energy, Daniel prepared to face the next phase of their journey. The unknown alien races approaching from the fringes of known space, the complex web of interstellar politics, and the monumental task of maintaining the newfound peace. All of these challenges lay ahead. As the Nexus hub hummed with activity, diplomats and former enemies alike preparing for the negotiations that would shape the future of all known species. Daniel couldn't help but feel the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Whatever came next, he knew that the crew of the Stellar Nomad would be at the forefront, navigating the turbulent waters of a galaxy on the brink of unprecedented change. Transformation for all known species, Daniel steeled himself for the challenges ahead. As the doors to the circular chamber hissed open, Daniel found himself at the center of attention. The progenitor's holographic form materialized beside him, its shifting form casting an ethereal glow across the room. We designate Daniel as guardian of Kira and unofficial representative of humanity, the being announced, its voice resonating through the chamber. His unique position and the trust he has earned from multiple species make him an ideal mediator for these negotiations. Daniel blinked, caught off guard by the sudden responsibility thrust upon him. He glanced at Kira, who offered an encouraging nod, her form still pulsing with the core's energy. Around the circular table, familiar and unfamiliar faces took their seats. Emperor Zarkin, his regal bearing softened by the lingering effects of the empathy field, sat opposite Colonel Hawk. Representatives from the Galactic Syndicate shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between the other delegates. But it was the new arrivals that captured Daniel's attention. To his left, a being that seemed to be composed entirely of interlocking crystal fragments took its place. Its faceted surface caught the light, scattering rainbows across the table. "I am Xylos of the Zorax," it introduced itself, its voice a melodious chime. To Daniel's right, a shifting mass of tiny organisms coalesced into a humanoid shape. When it spoke, it was a chorus of countless voices in perfect unison. "We are the myriad. We speak as one." As Daniel took his seat, he felt the weight of history pressing down on him. The negotiations began in earnest, with each faction presenting their grievances and demands. The lingering influence of the core's empathy field was evident, with many delegates showing unexpected understanding and compassion. However, Daniel noticed a troubling trend. Several of the Galactic Syndicate representatives seemed to be fighting against the core's influence. Their words were carefully measured, but their eyes held a calculating gleam that spoke of deeply ingrained prejudices and ambitions. As the discussions wore on, Daniel called for a brief recess. He stepped out of the chamber, his mind whirling with the complexities of interstellar diplomacy. It was then that Jack approached him, his face grave. "Boss, we've got a situation," Jack said, his voice low. "The Nomad's long-range sensors have picked up something big. There's a massive fleet heading our way from the outer reaches of the galaxy." Daniel's blood ran cold. "How long do we have?" "A few hours, tops," Jack replied. "And Daniel, there's more. We're calling them the Voidborn. From what we can tell, they're not too happy about the core being activated. Looks like they're coming in hot." Daniel ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. The delicate peace they'd achieved was now balanced on a knife's edge. He turned back to the chamber, knowing that the next few hours would determine the fate of humanity and all alien species. As he re-entered the room, Daniel's eyes met Kira's. She nodded, sensing his unease. "Everyone," Daniel called out, his voice cutting through the murmur of conversations. "We have a new development." He quickly briefed the delegates on the approaching void-born fleet. The room erupted into a cacophony of voices, fear and anger rippling through the assembled leaders. "We must extend the Corps' empathy field," Kira suggested, her voice carrying a new authority. "If we can reach them before they arrive, we might avoid conflict altogether." Dr. Tucker, who had been monitoring Kira's condition, stepped forward. "I must advise against that," he said, his face creased with worry. "Extending the field could have severe consequences for both Kira and the Corps itself. We'd be risking everything we've achieved." Daniel found himself at a crossroads. The safety of Kira and the stability of the Corps greatly troubled against the threat of an impending war. As he contemplated their options, Commander Drex approached, his transformed physiology still a striking sight. "I might have a solution," Drex offered, his voice carrying an odd resonance. "My connection to the Corps. I think I can use it to boost its power without putting additional strain on Kira." Daniel looked from Drex to Kira, then to the assembled delegates. Time was running out, and they needed to act. "All right," he said, making his decision. Dr. Tucker worked with Drex and Dr. Vex to safely amplify the Corps' power. "Jack, I need you and Vance to organize our defenses. Bring together ships from all allied species." As the room burst into action, Daniel turned to the Zorax and Myriad representatives. "We need your help, your technology, your tactical analysis. We'll need every advantage we can get." Xylos, the Zorax delegate, nodded, its crystalline form shimmering. "Our shielding technology is at your disposal." The Myriad's form rippled as it spoke. "Our collective intelligence will provide tactical support. But we offer something more. We believe we can attempt communication with the Voidborn using our unique consciousness." Daniel's eyes widened at the possibility. "Do it," he said. "Try to reach them. In the meantime, we'll prepare for the worst." As the delegates dispersed to their tasks, Daniel found himself alone with Kira. She reached out, taking his hand in hers. "Whatever happens," she said softly, "we're in this together." Daniel squeezed her hand, drawing strength from her presence. Outside the viewport, he could see ships from former enemy fleets moving into defensive formations around the Nexus hub. The progenitor ship glowed with power, extending a shimmering energy barrier to bolster their defenses. In the distance, barely visible against the backdrop of stars, Daniel caught his first glimpse of the approaching Voidborn fleet. As energy readings spiked and tensions rose to a fever pitch, he knew that the next few hours would test the limits of the fragile alliance they had forged. The future of the stars hung in the balance, and Daniel found himself at the center of the storm, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Ahead, the fate of countless civilizations rested on their actions in the coming hours. As Daniel processed the gravity of their situation, the Myriad's shifting form pulsed with an urgent rhythm. "We have established contact with the Voidborn," the collective consciousness announced, its harmonious voices tinged with concern. All eyes in the command center turned to the Myriad as it relayed the chilling message. The Voidborn demand immediate shutdown and surrender of the Nexus core. They threaten total annihilation if we do not comply. A tense silence fell over the room. Daniel's mind raced, seeking a solution that wouldn't undo everything they had fought so hard to achieve. He turned to the holographic form of the architect, the progenitor emissary. "What can you tell us about the Voidborn? And what are the Corps' true capabilities?" The architect's form shimmered as it spoke. "The Voidborn are an ancient race, as old as the progenitors themselves. They fear the power of the Nexus core, believing it could upset the balance of the galaxy." The being paused, its light dimming slightly. "As for the Corps' capabilities, they are vast and not fully understood, even by us. Its potential for uniting consciousness across vast distances is unparalleled. Daniel nodded, processing the information. He tapped his comm link. Jack, Vance, what's our defensive status? We've integrated the Zorax shielding tech with our fleet's weapon systems, Jack reported. It's not perfect, but it's the best we've got. The Myriad's tactical analysis is giving us an edge in predicting Voidborn movements. As Daniel contemplated their next move, Commander Drex approached, his altered physiology still a stark reminder of the Core's power. I have a proposal, Drex said, his voice carrying a newfound persistence. My connection to the Core might allow us to create a focused beam of empathic energy. We could potentially affect the Voidborn leadership, just as the Core influenced our peace talks. Before Daniel could respond, Kira gasped, her eyes wide and unfocused. I see a future, she whispered, her voice filled with awe. The Voidborn. They could be allies. If we can expose them to the Core's energy, they might join us in maintaining galactic peace. Daniel's mind whirled with possibilities. He looked at Drex, then at Kira, and finally at the assembled leaders. We need to take a chance, he declared. But instead of a focused beam, we'll create an expanding sphere of the Core's energy. It's riskier, but it could envelop both fleets. The room erupted into a flurry of activity. Dr. Tucker and Dr. Vex rushed to modify the Core systems, integrating Drex into its control mechanisms. The process was visibly painful for Drex, but he gritted his teeth, determined to see it through. As the modifications neared completion, the Voidborn launched their first assault. The command center shook as energy weapons slammed into the Allied fleet shields. Daniel watched the tactical display, his heart racing as he saw the progenitor ship move to the front lines, its advanced defenses barely holding. Now! Daniel shouted as the systems came online. Activate the empathic sphere. Drex, connected to the Core, channeled its energy through his body. Kira stood nearby, adding her evolving powers to the mix. The hub trembled as a massive pulse of energy exploded outward, engulfing both fleets in a shimmering, translucent sphere. The effect was immediate and profound. Throughout both fleets, beings of all species experienced a flood of shared emotions and memories. On the tactical display, Daniel watched as the Voidborn fleet suddenly ceased fire. For several agonizing moments, silence reigned across the battlefield. Then, unexpectedly, a transmission came through from the Voidborn flagship. Their leader, voice trembling with newfound emotion, requested a parley. Daniel exhaled slowly, the tension in his body easing slightly. He looked around the command center, seeing the mix of hope and apprehension on the faces of his allies. The Nexus hub's alarms continued to blare, warning of system overloads and the strain on the Core. Evacuate all non-essential personnel to the Allied ships, Daniel ordered, his voice firm. I'll remain here with Kira to meet the Voidborn leader. As the command center emptied, Daniel turned to Kira. Her form still pulsed with the Core's energy, her eyes shimmering with an otherworldly light. Are you ready for this? He asked softly. Kira nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. Together, she replied, taking his hand in hers. They moved towards the hub's main reception chamber, prepared to face whatever the Voidborn leader might bring. Behind them, Drex remained connected to the Core, his body trembling with the effort of maintaining the empathic sphere. As the doors to the chamber hissed open, Daniel squared his shoulders. The hope of the universe hung in the balance, and the next few moments would determine whether they faced a new era of unprecedented unity or the outbreak of a catastrophic war. With Kira by his side, he stepped forward to meet the unknown. Voidborn leader. As the doors slid open, Daniel's eyes widened at the sight before him. The Voidborn representative stood, or rather, hovered, in the center of the room. It was a swirling mass of dark energy contained within a specially designed suit, its form constantly shifting and roiling like a storm cloud. The security detail, a mix of humans, Trill, and Zorax, flanked the being, their weapons lowered but at the ready. Daniel stepped forward, Kira at his side. He felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him, knowing that the next few minutes could determine the future of the cosmos. Emperor Zarkin, Colonel Hawk, and representatives from the Zorax and Myriad filed in behind them, each taking their positions around the conference table. The architect's holographic form shimmered into existence, its ethereal presence a stark contrast to the Voidborn's dark energy. "Let us begin," the progenitor emissary intoned, its voice resonating through the room. As Daniel opened his mouth to speak, a violent tremor shook the hub. Alarms blared, their shrill cries cutting through the tense atmosphere. "Status report," Daniel barked into his comm. Dr. Tucker's strained voice came through. "The core's power levels are fluctuating dangerously, Director. Commander Drex is. He's struggling to maintain the empathic field. We're looking at imminent system failures across the board." Daniel exchanged a worried glance with Kira. The empathic field was the only thing keeping the peace. If it failed, the Voidborn leader's voice, a deep, reverberating sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, filled the room. "Your core threatens our very existence. We demand its immediate shutdown." "With all due respect," Daniel countered, fighting to keep his voice steady, "the core is the reason we're here talking instead of destroying each other. There must be a way we can coexist." The Voidborn's form pulsed angrily. "You do not understand. Our energy-based existence makes us vulnerable to the type of unity your core promotes. It could lead to the dissolution of our individual identities. We would cease to be." A heavy silence fell over the room as the implications of the Voidborn's words sank in. Daniel's mind raced, searching for a solution that wouldn't undo everything they had fought so hard to achieve. Suddenly, Kira stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with an otherworldly light. "What if we could modify the core's energy output?" she suggested, her voice carrying a new authority. "Create a harmonious balance that would allow the Voidborn to maintain their individuality while still participating in galactic unity." The Voidborn leader's form stilled, its swirling energy focusing intently on Kira. The architect's hologram brightened, its voice filled with excitement. Yes, this could work. It aligns perfectly with the progenitor's original vision." As discussions began in earnest, Daniel's calm crackled to life once more. "Boss," Jack's voice came through, tight with tension. "We've got a situation. Several Voidborn ships are showing unusual energy fluctuations. We think not all of them are on board with this peace talk." Daniel's expression resolute. He relayed the information to the room, watching as the Voidborn leader's form rippled with what might have been concern. Before anyone could respond, another violent tremor rocked the hub. This time, the lights flickered ominously. "Director," Dr. Tucker's voice was urgent, "we need to do something about the core now. Commander Drex's life signs are becoming erratic. If we don't act soon, we'll lose both him and the empathic field." Daniel made a split-second decision. "We need to transfer the core's functions to the progenitor's ship," he announced. "It's risky, but it'll allow us to make the necessary repairs and modifications to the hub." The architect's hologram flickered. "The transfer has never been attempted before. The risks are significant." "It's also a show of trust," Daniel added, looking directly at the Voidborn leader. "It temporarily diminishes the perceived threat to your existence." Emperor Zarkin and Colonel Hawk voiced their concerns, but ultimately agreed it was the best course of action. The Voidborn leader, after a moment of contemplation, gave a gesture that Daniel interpreted as assent. As preparations for the transfer began, Jack's voice came through once more. Daniel, long-range sensors have picked up a massive Trill fleet heading our way. It's Admiral Krell. Daniel's blood ran cold. Admiral Krell, unaware of the recent peace negotiations, could reignite the conflict in an instant. He turned to the Voidborn leader, an idea forming. "We need your help," he said. "Can you use your technology to create an illusion of a still hostile Voidborn fleet? It'll buy us time to let the empathic field affect Krell's forces when they arrive." The Voidborn leader's form pulsed, considering the request. After a moment, it spoke. "We will do this. It is an opportunity to demonstrate our commitment to this alliance." As the Voidborn began coordinating with Jack and Vance to create the illusion, Daniel watched the hub's main view screen. The progenitor ship glowed with an intense light as it prepared to receive the core's functions. Commander Drex's vitals, displayed on a nearby monitor, continued to fluctuate wildly. Kira worked feverishly with the architect, refining her proposal for modifying the core's energy output. The fate of galaxies hung on their success. Daniel stood at the center of it all, watching as multiple critical events unfolded simultaneously. The core transfer began, its energy streaming towards a progenitor ship in a dazzling display of light. The Voidborn fleet repositioned, creating a convincing illusion of hostility for the approaching Trill forces. As Admiral Krell's fleet appeared on the edge of the system, Daniel steeled himself for the confrontation to come. The next few hours would determine whether their fragile alliance would usher in an era of unprecedented peace or crumble into catastrophic war. The hub shuddered once more, a stark reminder of the challenges they faced. Daniel watched the stars through the view screen, knowing that somewhere out there, the future of the galaxy was hurtling towards him at faster-than-light speeds. As Daniel watched the stars through the view screen, the hub suddenly lurched violently, nearly throwing him off his feet. Alarms blared with renewed urgency, and the lights flickered ominously. "What's happening?" Daniel demanded, steadying himself against a nearby console. Dr. Tucker's voice crackled over the comm, strained and urgent. "The core transfer is more complex than we anticipated, Director. We're experiencing severe power fluctuations throughout the hub." Daniel's eyes sharp as he processed the information. He turned to the Voidborn leader, whose form seemed to pulse with agitation. "We need to accelerate our plans. Can your ships maintain the illusion for Admiral Krell's fleet?" The Voidborn's response was cut short by a pained cry from across the room. Commander Drex, still connected to the core, convulsed as pulses of energy radiated from his body, interfering with nearby equipment. "Get him to a containment chamber now," Daniel ordered, pointing to a group of nearby technicians. As they moved to comply, another tremor shook the hub, and the lights dimmed further. "Daniel," Jack's voice came through, tight with tension. "We've got a problem with the Voidborn fleet. Some ships are breaking formation. The illusion won't hold much longer." Daniel's mind raced, weighing his options as multiple crises converged. He caught Kira's eye across the room, noting the determined set of her jaw. "I have an idea," Kira said, her voice carrying a newfound strength. "I can use my hybrid physiology to stabilize the core transfer and maintain the empathic field. It's risky, but it might be our only chance." Daniel hesitated, the potential danger to Kira clear in his mind. Before he could respond, the view screen lit up with the arrival of Admiral Krell's fleet, dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge. "We're out of time," Daniel said, his decision made. "Do it, Kira. Jack, prepare the Stellar Nomad for immediate launch. I'm going to confront Admiral Krell personally." As Kira moved to connect herself to the core systems, Daniel turned to Emperor Zarkin and the Voidborn leader. "You're coming with me. We need to present a united front." The trio rushed to the Stellar Nomad as chaos erupted around them. The ship's engines hummed to life as they boarded, Jack's fingers flying over the controls. Stealth systems engaged, Vance reported as they slipped away from the hub, weaving through the confused mess of ships surrounding it. On the display, Daniel watched as the progenitor ship moved to protect the vulnerable hub. Its sleek form glowed with an ethereal light as it extended its energy field around the station. "We're approaching Krell's flagship," Jack announced, his voice tense. "Still undetected, but—" His words were cut off as a rogue void-born ship suddenly broke formation, unleashing a barrage of energy weapons on Krell's fleet. The carefully crafted illusion shattered in an instant. "Damn it!" Daniel smacked his fist on the console. "Open a channel to Krell's flagship. Now!" As Jack worked to establish communication, Daniel's mind raced. The entire operation teetered on the brink of catastrophe. Kira's life hung in the balance as she struggled to stabilize the core transfer. Commander Drex posed a significant threat to the hub's remaining systems. And now, the fragile ceasefire was crumbling before his eyes. "Channel open," Jack reported. Daniel took a deep breath, steeling himself for what might be the most important conversation of his life. "Admiral Krell, this is Director Daniel Wells of the Nexus Initiative. I know what this looks like, but I assure you, it's not what you think. We need to talk. Now." There was a moment of tense silence before Krell's gruff voice filled the Nomad's bridge. "You have exactly 1 minute to explain why I shouldn't obliterate you and your allies, Wells." Daniel glanced at Emperor Zarkin and the Void-born leader, both nodding their silent support. He launched into a rapid-fire explanation of the situation, emphasizing the newfound alliance and the potential for lasting peace. As he spoke, Daniel's eyes remained fixed on the screen, watching as Krell's ships held their fire for now. In the distance, the progenitor ship's protective field around the hub pulsed with increasing intensity, a visual reminder of the clock ticking down on their chances for success. "I'm listening, Wells," Krell said as Daniel finished his explanation. "But I need more than words. I need proof." Daniel's mind raced, knowing that the next few moments would determine the fate of their fragile alliance. He took a deep breath, preparing to make his final plea to the Admiral. "Then come see for yourself, Admiral," Daniel said, his voice steady despite the tension coursing through him. "Experience the empathic field. Witness the power of unity we've discovered. It's the only way you'll truly understand what we're trying to achieve here." As he awaited Krell's response, Daniel could only hope that the foundations they'd laid and the sacrifices made by Kira, Drex, and countless others would be enough to bridge the gap between suspicion and trust, between conflict and peace. The silence stretched on, each second feeling like an eternity as the fate of galaxies hung in the balance. Balance as the fate of galaxies hung in the air. Suddenly, Admiral Krell's gruff voice cut through the tension. "Very well, Wells. I'll see this for myself. But if this is a trap, I'll make sure it's the last one you ever set." Daniel exhaled, relief mixing with apprehension. "Thank you, Admiral. We're returning to the Nexus hub now. You'll see the truth with your own eyes." As the stellar Nomad maneuvered back towards the hub, alarms blared through the ship's speakers. "Daniel!" Jack's voice was urgent. "We've got a situation at the hub. Commander Drex has broken containment. He's tearing through the station." Daniel's stomach dropped. "Get us there now, Jack. Push the engines to their limit." The Nomad surged forward, its hull groaning under the strain. Through the view screen, Daniel watched as the Nexus hub came into view, its structure pulsing with erratic energy discharges. "What's happening to the station?" Emperor Zarkin demanded, his reptilian features contorted with concern. Before Daniel could respond, the ship's comm crackled to life. Dr. Tucker's panicked voice filled the bridge. "Director, Drex is radiating massive amounts of energy. He's causing system failures across the entire hub. We can't contain him." As they approached the docking bay, Daniel saw flashes of light and movement through the station's viewports. Security teams, led by towering Zorax warriors, were engaged in a futile chase, their weapons seeming to have little effect on Drex's energy-infused form. "This is madness," the Void-born leader pulsed, its form flickering with agitation. The core's energy was never meant to be contained within a physical being. The Nomad shuddered as it docked with the hub. Daniel turned to Admiral Krell, whose face was a mask of suspicion and growing alarm. "Admiral, I know this isn't what you expected, but we need your help. Your fleet could be crucial in maintaining order while we deal with this crisis." Krell's eyes narrowed, but he gave a curt nod. "My ships will hold position. But I want answers, Wells. Now." As they disembarked, another violent tremor shook the station. Daniel stumbled, catching himself on a bulkhead. "This way," he shouted over the blaring alarms, leading the group towards the central chamber. They passed scenes of chaos. Crew members rushing to emergency stations, damaged systems sparking and smoking. As they rounded a corner, Daniel saw a group of security personnel thrown backwards, their bodies crackling with residual energy. At the end of the corridor stood Commander Drex, his form barely recognizable. Energy coursed over his skin, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. He turned, fixing his gaze on Daniel and the others. "Stay back," Daniel warned, pushing Admiral Krell behind him. But before Drex could advance, he clutched his head and screamed, vanishing in a burst of light that left scorch marks on the walls. "He's teleporting," the Void-born leader observed. "The core's energy is rewriting his very existence." They pressed on, finally reaching the central chamber. The sight that greeted them left Daniel breathless. Kira hovered above the ground, her body shimmering with the same energy that had consumed Drex. Tendrils of light connected her to the core transfer systems, pulsing in sync with her heartbeat. "Kira," Daniel called out, but she seemed unable to hear him, her eyes unfocused and distant. Dr. Tucker rushed over, his face pale with exhaustion and worry. The core transfer was destabilizing. Kira interfaced with the system to try and stabilize it, but something unexpected happened. "She's changing." Admiral Krell pushed forward, his eyes wide with a mix of awe and fear. "What in the seven hells is going on here, Wells?" Before Daniel could answer, the station rocked violently. Alarms screamed with renewed urgency. "We're under attack." Jack's voice came through Daniel's comm. "A group of Void-born ships have broken away. They're firing on the hub and Krell's flagship." Daniel's mind raced, trying to process the cascade of crises unfolding around him. He turned to the Void-born leader, whose form pulsed with what might have been shame or anger. "Can you contact them? Make them stand down?" The energy being's response was cut short as Commander Drex materialized in the center of the room, his body crackling with power. Security teams poured in, weapons trained on the unstable officer. In that moment, as chaos reigned and the fate of the Alliance hung by a thread, Daniel realized that every decision he made in the next few minutes would shape the future of galactic civilization. He looked from Kira's transforming form to Drex's energy-wreathed body, to the faces of those around him, allies and former enemies alike, all waiting for his next move. The Nexus hub shuddered again, a grim reminder of the battle raging outside and the limited time they had left. Daniel took a deep breath, steeling himself for what came next. Whatever happened, he knew that the course of history was about to be altered forever. Daniel's mind raced with possibilities. But before he could formulate a plan, the Nexus hub shuddered violently. The impact threw everyone off balance, and alarms blared with renewed urgency. Direct hit from rogue Void-born ships. Jack's voice crackled through the comm. "Hub structural integrity is failing." As if to punctuate Jack's warning, a deep groan reverberated through the station. Ceiling panels buckled, and sparks rained down from damaged conduits. Automated evacuation alert activated. An AI voice announced calmly over the chaos. All personnel proceed to designated escape pods immediately. Daniel's eyes darted from Kira's shimmering form to Drex's energy-wreathed body, then to the concerned faces of Admiral Krell and the others. In that split second, he realized their original plan was no longer viable. "We need to alter course," Daniel announced, his voice cutting through the din. "The hub can't handle the core's power in this state. We're transferring it to the progenitor ship." A holographic projection of the architect flickered to life, its image distorted by interference. The progenitor vessel stands ready to receive the core, Director Wells. However, a stable connection is required for the transfer. "Impossible with the current attack," Emperor Zarkin growled, steadying himself against the console as another tremor shook the station. The chamber doors hissed open, admitting Jack Vance and a team of hulking Zorax engineers. Jack's face was smeared with grime, his uniform singed. "Non-essential personnel are evacuated," Jack reported. "But we've got a solution for the core transfer." Vance stepped forward, his eyes alight with dedication. "We can use the Stellar Nomad as a bridge. Its shielding and the new Voidborn tech we installed make it perfect for creating an energy conduit." Daniel nodded, hope rekindling. "Make it happen." As the team sprang into action, Commander Drex suddenly stilled. The chaotic energy surrounding him coalesced, pulsing in sync with the core's frequencies. I can help," Drex said, his voice echoing strangely. "I can contain the core's energy during transit." Admiral Krell, who had been observing silently, stepped forward. "Wells, I'm convinced. My fleet will provide cover for the operation." He tapped his comm unit, barking orders to his ships. Outside, the battle intensified. The combined Alliance fleet formed a protective barrier around the hub, the Stellar Nomad, and the progenitor ship. Krell's flagship led a squadron of Trill battleships, engaging the rogue Voidborn vessels with precision strikes. The Stellar Nomad disengaged from its docking clamps, thrusters flaring as Jack guided it into position. Through the viewports, Daniel watched the sleek ship maneuver between the failing hub and the ancient progenitor vessel. "Energy conduit systems online," Vance reported, his fingers dancing over the controls. The Nomad's hull began to glow, transforming into a living bridge of pure energy. As the transfer commenced, Kira's partially energy-based form separated from the hub systems. She hovered at the entrance of the energy conduit, her essence intertwined with the core's consciousness. "I'll guide it through," Kira's voice echoed in their minds. "Trust me." Daniel watched the monitors, tracking Kira's life signs as she led the way. Her form flickered between human and pure energy, the sight both beautiful and terrifying. The Stellar Nomad groaned under the strain. In the engine room, Vance and the Zorax engineers worked feverishly, rerouting power and replacing burnout components. "Stabilizers failing on Deck 3. Vance shouted over the comm. "Bypassing now." In the center of the energy stream, Commander Drex's body arched, his eyes glowing with otherworldly light as he channeled the core's power, keeping it focused and contained. The progenitor ship began to change as the core's energy flowed into it. Dormant systems flickered to life, and its hull shimmered with newfound power. "Integration proceeding beyond expected parameters," the architect announced, its holographic form stabilizing. "The ship's full capabilities are awakening." A massive explosion rocked the Nomad. On the tactical display, Daniel saw a group of rogue Voidborn ships breaking through the defensive line, concentrating their fire on the vulnerable energy conduit. "They're trying to disrupt the transfer." Admiral Krell's voice boomed through the comm. "All ships, concentrate fire on those rogues." The space around the Nomad erupted into a furious battle. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes crisscrossed the void as Krell's forces moved to intercept the void-borne assault. Another violent tremor shook the hub. Warning klaxons blared as entire sections began to break apart. Hub structural integrity at critical levels, the AI announced. Complete evacuation required. Everyone out, Daniel ordered, ushering the remaining team members toward the escape pods. Move! As they raced through the disintegrating corridors, Daniel's mind whirled. The core transfer was nearly complete, but the Nomad was under heavy fire. And Kira and Drex were still connected to the process, their fates uncertain. They reached the escape pod bay just as a massive section of the hub's outer hull tore away, exposing several decks to the vacuum of space. Daniel helped the others into the pods, his heart pounding as he took one last look at the incredible scene unfolding around them. The stellar Nomad stood as a beacon of light between the failing hub and the transformed progenitor ship. Krell's forces battled furiously against the rogue Voidborn, the fate of galaxies hanging in the balance. And somewhere in that stream of pure energy, Kira and Drex fought to complete the transfer that could change everything. As the escape pods hatch sealed shut, Daniel knew that the next few moments would determine not just their survival, but the future of the entire alliance. The pod launched, carrying them away from the hub and into the heart of the battle that raged around them. The pod launched, carrying them away from the hub and into the heart of the battle that raged around them. But as Daniel watched the chaos unfold through the viewport, a sickening realization struck him. Kira and Drex were still trapped inside, connected to the core transfer process. Without hesitation, Daniel overrode the pod's controls, halting its trajectory. "I can't leave them behind," he announced, his voice firm despite the tremor in his hands. "The rest of you get to safety. I'm going back." Before anyone could protest, Daniel had cycled the airlock and propelled himself back towards the disintegrating hub. The void of space enveloped him, punctuated by flashes of weapons fire and the burning debris of destroyed ships. He activated his suit's maneuvering thrusters, dodging a piece of hull plating as it spiraled past. Inside the hub, alarms blared incessantly as the station groaned under the strain of its own collapse. Daniel fought against failing gravity systems, pushing off walls and clambering through partially depressurized corridors. He paused at an emergency station, quickly donning a vacuum suit to protect against the pockets of vacuum forming as the hull breached in multiple locations. "Daniel, what's your status?" Jack's voice crackled through his calm. "The Nomad's taking a beating out here." "Almost to the central chamber," Daniel replied, his breath heavy as he navigated a section of corridor open to space. "How's the transfer holding?" "Barely." Vance cut in, the sound of sparking systems audible in the background. "We've got multiple hull breaches. If those Voidborn make another run at us, dash." His words were cut off by a violent impact that shook the entire structure. Daniel was thrown against a bulkhead, the air driven from his lungs. Through a nearby viewport, he saw a Voidborn ship careen past, flames erupting from its hull as it collided with the Nomad. "Jack!" Daniel shouted into his calm. "Report." For a heart-stopping moment, there was only static. Then, "Still here, but not for long if we don't wrap this up. Our shields are failing." Daniel redoubled his efforts, pushing through the pain of what he suspected were cracked ribs. He finally reached the central chamber, the sight before him both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Kira and Drex hovered in a maelstrom of energy, their forms flickering between solid and ethereal. Tendrils of power snaked from their bodies, connecting to the transfer systems and stretching out through the Nomad to the progenitor ship beyond. Daniel rushed to the main console, his fingers flying over the controls as he initiated the emergency separation protocol. "Kira, Drex, if you can hear me, I'm cutting the connection. Brace yourselves." He slammed his hand down on the final command. The energy tendrils convulsed, snapping back like broken power lines. Kira gasped, her body solidifying as she dropped to the floor. Drex wasn't as lucky. He collapsed, his form still crackling with residual energy. Daniel scooped up Kira with one arm, dragging Drex with the other. "Jack, we're clear. Get the Nomad out of there." "Negative," Jack replied, his voice strained. "We've still got active conduits. If we disengage now, the backlash could destroy us in the hub." The deck lurched beneath them as another explosion rocked the station. Daniel stumbled, nearly losing his grip on his unconscious companions. "We don't have time for a smooth disconnect. You need to go now." For a moment, there was silence on the comm. Then the architect's voice, calm amidst the chaos. "The progenitor vessel will extend its protective field. Prepare for emergency extraction." Before Daniel could question what that meant, the world around him shimmered. The failing hub seemed to dissolve, replaced by the sleek, pulsing interior of the progenitor's ship. He found himself on his knees, Kira and Drex still held tightly in his grasp. Through the ship's viewports, Daniel watched as the Nomad disengaged from the hub, trailing arcs of energy. The ancient vessel's field expanded, enveloping the Nomad and drawing it closer. "Core transfer complete," the architect announced. "Initiating defensive protocols." The progenitor ship hummed with power. Its hull shimmered, previously hidden structures unfolding like the petals of a blooming flower. Energy gathered at focal points along its surface, then lashed out in brilliant beams that sighed through the attacking void-born vessels. In the space of heartbeats, the tide of battle shifted. The rogue void-born fleet, faced with the awesome power of the activated progenitor ship, began to retreat. The Nexus hub, no longer able to contain the damage it had sustained, erupted in a final, cataclysmic explosion. As the light of the explosion faded, Daniel felt the adrenaline drain from his system. He sagged, the full weight of what they'd endured crashing down upon him. Kira stirred in his arms, her eyes fluttering open. Did we do it?" she asked, her voice weak but hopeful. Daniel nodded, a weary smile crossing his face. "Yeah, we did it. But something tells me our work is just getting started." As if in response to his words, the architect's holographic form materialized before them. Indeed, Director Wells, the integration of the Nexus core has unlocked capabilities beyond our initial projections. However, the galaxy now stands at a crossroads. The choices we make in the coming days will shape the future of countless civilizations. Daniel looked around at his team as they began to gather in the progenitor ship's control center. Admiral Krell, his uniform scorched and torn, stood beside the void-born leader, whose form pulsed with a mix of emotions. Jack and Van stumbled in, supported by Zorak's engineers, all bearing the marks of their desperate battle aboard the Nomad. As the disparate group of allies converged, Daniel realized that their greatest challenge lay ahead. They had survived the crucible of conflict, but now they faced the monumental task of forging a new galactic order from the ashes of the old. The progenitor ship hummed beneath them, a testament to the power they now wielded and the responsibility that came with it. As Daniel prepared to address the assembled leaders, he knew that every word, every decision would ripple across the cosmos, shaping the destiny of entire worlds. Daniel's words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of their newfound responsibility. Before he could fully articulate their next steps, the progenitor ship shuddered, its systems pulsing with newfound energy. The architect's holographic form flickered, its voice resonating through the control center. Integration complete. Initiating full systems activation. The ship's interior transformed before their eyes. Dormant panels blazed to life, holographic displays materializing throughout the chamber. The hull, once a dull metallic sheen, now gleamed with an otherworldly iridescence that rippled like liquid starlight. "By the void!" Admiral Crow whispered, his eyes wide as he took in the spectacle. Daniel turned to Kira, who swayed unsteadily on her feet. Her skin flickered intermittently, revealing glimpses of the energy form she had partially inhabited. "We need to get you to medical," he said, supporting her weight. Commander Drex groaned, his body crackling with residual energy. I feel strange," he muttered, his voice distorted. "Medics," Daniel called out. A team of Zorax rushed forward, their tentacles carefully maneuvering hover stretchers into position. As Kira and Drex were whisked away to the medical bay, Daniel's attention was drawn to the massive viewports. The remains of the Nexus hub drifted in the void, surrounded by the debris of destroyed ships. The Trill fleet, battered but intact, moved into a defensive formation around the progenitor vessel. "Admiral," Daniel said, turning to Krell, "what's the status of the rogue Voidborn?" Krell consulted a tactical display. They'd withdrawn to the edge of the system. "Wait, we're receiving a transmission." A holographic screen materialized, revealing the undulating form of a Voidborn leader. Its voice resonated directly in their minds. "We seek parley, the power you now wield. It changes everything." Daniel exchanged glances with the assembled leaders before responding. "We're open to discussion. Prepare a delegation to board dash." His words were cut short as alarms blared throughout the ship. The architect's voice rang out, alert, detecting massive energy signatures at the system's edge. "Unknown vessels inbound." The view screen shifted, revealing a terrifying sight. A vast armada of ships unlike anything they had ever seen approached. Their design was a nightmarish fusion of progenitor technology and Voidborn energy manipulation. "Scions," the architect announced, its tone grave. "A faction that broke from progenitor society eons ago. They seek the core's power for domination, not unity." Daniel's mind raced. They were in no condition for another battle, yet the stakes couldn't be higher. "Admiral Krell, Emperor Zarkin, coordinate our forces. Integrate the Voidborn ships into our formation. Consider it a gesture of good faith." As the leaders sprang into action, Daniel turned to Jack and Vance, who had just arrived from the Nomad. "How bad is it?" Vance grimaced. "We're holding together, but another firefight could tear us apart. We need time for repairs and upgrades." "Time we don't have," Daniel muttered. He addressed the architect. "You mentioned the core unlocked new information. What can you tell us about our options?" The architect's form expanded, projecting a star map. The integration revealed the location of a hidden progenitor facility. It houses technology capable of permanently stabilizing the core's empathic field. However, the facility is in an uncharted sector, heavily defended. Daniel's eyes narrowed as he studied the map. A plan began to form in his mind, equal parts desperate and daring. If we secure that facility, could we end this conflict for good? "Theoretically, yes," the architect confirmed. "But the Scions will not cease their advance. A decision must be made quickly." The control center buzzed with activity as Daniel weighed their options. Confront the Scions head-on with their battered fleet, or risk everything on a bold move to secure the hidden facility. At that moment, Kira's voice came through the comm system. "Daniel, I'm seeing things. The facility, its defenses. I think I can help guide us." Commander Drex's voice followed, stronger than before. "My body, it's changed. I can interface directly with progenitor tech now. Whatever you decide, I'm ready." Daniel took a deep breath, feeling the weight of countless lives resting on his next words. The Scion fleet drew ever closer, their weapons charging. The hidden facility beckoned, a promise of lasting peace. As Alliance leaders turned to him for direction, Daniel prepared to make a choice that would alter the course of galactic history. The silence in the control center was palpable as all eyes turned to Daniel, awaiting his decision. He took a deep breath, his mind racing through the possibilities. "We don't have the strength to face the science head-on," he said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "But we can't ignore this threat either." Daniel turned to the architect, his eyes narrowing with willpower. "You said the hidden facility could stabilize the core's empathic field. Could that give us an edge against the science?" The architect's holographic form shimmered. Affirmative. The technology housed there could potentially neutralize the science's ability to manipulate void energy. Daniel nodded, his decision crystallizing. "Then that's our play. We split our forces." He turned to Admiral Krell, who stood at attention despite his battered appearance. "Admiral, I need you to lead the majority of our fleet in a defensive action against the Scions. Buy us time." Krell's tentacles writhed with a mix of anticipation and concern. "It will be a difficult battle, Director Wells. But we'll hold the line." "Emperor Zarkin," Daniel continued, addressing the Voidborn leader, "your ships will be crucial in this fight. Can we count on your support?" The Voidborn's form pulsed with affirmation. "We stand with you against this threat." Daniel nodded, then turned to his core team. "Jack, Vance, you're with me. We're taking the Stellar Nomad on a strike mission to secure that facility." Vance's eyes widened. "The Nomad? She's barely holding together as it is." "Which is why we're going to give her some upgrades," Daniel replied, glancing at the architect. "How quickly can we integrate some of this progenitor tech into our systems?" The architect's form expanded, projecting a schematic of the Stellar Nomad. "With the assistance of the Zorax engineers, we can enhance the Nomad's capabilities within the hour." As the team sprung into action, preparing for their respective missions, Daniel felt a presence at his side. He turned to see Emperor Zarkin, his form rippling with an unreadable emotion. "I wish to join your strike team, Director Wells," the Voidborn leader stated. Daniel hesitated, weighing the potential risks and benefits. After a moment, he nodded. "Your knowledge could be invaluable. Welcome aboard, Emperor." As the Zorax engineers swarmed over the Stellar Nomad, integrating progenitor technology into its systems, Daniel made his way to the medical bay. He found Kira sitting up on a bed, her form more stable but still occasionally flickering with energy. "How are you feeling?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Kira managed a weak smile, "Like I've been struck by lightning and then dunked in a sensory deprivation tank. But I'll live." Her expression grew serious. "Daniel, these visions. I think I can help guide us through the facility." Before Daniel could respond, Commander Drex approached, his body humming with a newfound energy. "Director Wells, I believe I can interface directly with progenitor systems now. Whatever you need, I'm ready." Daniel nodded, a plan forming in his mind. "Good. You're both coming with us." Within the hour, the Stellar Nomad was prepped and ready, its hull now gleaming with integrated progenitor tech. The strike team assembled in the ship's newly expanded bridge. Daniel, Kira, Drex, Jack, Vance, Emperor Zarkin, and a select group of Zorax engineers. As they prepared to depart, the architect's voice resonated through the ship. "I've uploaded all available data on the hidden facility to your systems. There's one more thing you should know." The main view screen flickered to life, displaying a massive interdimensional portal forming near the progenitor ship. "This portal will allow you to reach the facility's sector almost instantaneously," the architect explained. "But be warned, the journey will be intense." Daniel's grip tightened on his chair as Jack guided the Stellar Nomad towards the swirling vortex. Through the comms, Admiral Krell's voice crackled. Scion fleet engaged. We'll hold them off as long as we can. Good luck, Director. With a nod to Jack, Daniel gave the order. Take us in. The stellar nomad plunged into the portal, and reality seemed to twist around them. The ship bucked and shuddered, straining against forces beyond comprehension. Jack's hands flew over the controls, his face a mask of concentration as he fought to keep them on course. Vance monitored the ship's systems, calling out warnings as power fluctuated wildly. The Zorax engineers worked feverishly to maintain stability, their tentacles a blur of motion across various control panels. Emperor Zarkin's form pulsed erratically, clearly affected by the dimensional transit. Kira gripped her seat, her eyes closed in concentration as visions flashed through her mind. Drex stood unnaturally still, his body seeming to resonate with the ship's progenitor tech. Just when it seemed the Nomad might tear itself apart, they burst from the portal into an unknown sector of space. Before them loomed a massive nebula, its swirling gases hiding their ultimate destination. As Jack maneuvered the ship closer, the nebula's gases parted, revealing an enormous space station of ancient design. The hidden progenitor facility lay before them, a beacon of hope in their desperate mission. But their moment of awe was short-lived. Alarms blared as multiple ships suddenly decloaked around them, bearing markings similar to the Scion fleet. Evasive maneuvers, Daniel shouted as enemy fire lanced towards them. Jack's hands danced across the controls, pushing the upgraded Nomad to its limits. The ship corkscrewed through space, narrowly avoiding the barrage of weapons fire. Vance, what's our status? Daniel called out, gripping his chair as the ship shuddered under a glancing hit. Shields holding at 80%, Vance reported, his fingers flying over his console. The progenitor upgrades are performing better than expected, but we can't take much more of this. Daniel's mind raced, assessing their options. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had come too far to fail now. He turned to Commander Drex, who stood with his eyes closed, a faint glow emanating from his skin. Drex, can you interface with the facility's defenses? Daniel asked urgently. Drex's eyes snapped open, glowing with an otherworldly light. I think so. Give me a moment. As Drex communed with the ancient systems, the space around them erupted into chaos. Several automated defense platforms suddenly sprang to life, their weapons turning on the Scion ships. There! Kira exclaimed, pointing to a section of the massive station. I see a concealed docking port. It's our way in. Daniel relayed the coordinates to Jack, who sent the Nomad into a series of tight maneuvers, weaving through the crossfire between the defense platforms and the Scion vessels. As they approached the hidden entrance, a final obstacle presented itself. The docking port remained sealed, its ancient security systems requiring authentication. We need a genetic key, Drex announced, his voice strained from the mental exertion of interfacing with the station. Without hesitation, Kira stepped forward, her hand outstretched towards the access panel. As her fingers made contact, her body briefly flared with energy. The massive docking bay doors began to groan open, revealing a cavernous interior bathed in soft, blue light. Jack, get us inside, Daniel ordered, his voice tight with urgency. The stellar Nomad glided into the ancient facility, the docking bay doors sealing shut behind them. As the ship settled onto the hangar floor, Daniel turned to his team, their faces a mix of commitment and apprehension. We've made it this far, he said, standing to address them. But our real challenge is just beginning. We need to find the technology to stabilize the core's empathic field and defend it from the Scions who've already infiltrated this place. As the team prepared to disembark, Daniel cast a final glance at the sealed hangar doors. Somewhere beyond, a desperate battle raged, with Admiral Krell and their allies fighting to buy them time. The fate of humanity and all alien species now rested on their ability to unlock the secrets of this ancient progenitor facility. With a hiss of equalizing pressure, the stellar nomad's airlock opened, and Daniel led his team into the unknown depths of the station. The air was thick with tension and the weight of their mission as they stepped into the dimly lit corridors of the facility, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. The ancient corridors echoed with the footsteps of Daniel's team as they ventured deeper into the progenitor facility. The air hummed with latent energy, a testament to the advanced technology that lay dormant within these walls. As they rounded a corner, a shimmering figure materialized before them, startling the group. The holographic entity bore a striking resemblance to the architect, but its demeanor seemed more austere, almost vigilant. "Welcome, descendants," the figure intoned, its voice resonating with an otherworldly timbre. "I am the guardian, custodian of this facility." Daniel stepped forward, his posture tense but determined. "We seek the technology to stabilize the core's empathic field. Can you help us?" The Guardian's form flickered briefly before responding. "The stabilization matrix you seek is located in the central control room. However, I must warn you that Scion forces have already breached the lower levels of the station." Daniel's mind raced, quickly formulating a plan. He turned to his team, eyes scanning their faces. "We need to split up. Jack, take Vance and the Zorax engineers to secure the power core and defense systems. The rest of us will make for the central control room." As the team divided, Daniel led his group through a labyrinth of corridors. Commander Drex's newfound abilities proved invaluable as they encountered a series of automated defense mechanisms. His eyes glowed with an eerie light as he interfaced with each obstacle, deftly bypassing security protocols that had lain undisturbed for millennia. Kira moved with a quiet intensity, her connection to the Nexus core allowing her to sense the movements of the Scion forces. "Daniel," she whispered, pulling him aside as they approached an intersection. "There's a group of them 2 levels below us, moving fast." Meanwhile, Jack's team arrived at the power core, only to find it damaged and sputtering with unstable energy. The Zorax engineers immediately set to work, their tentacles a blur of motion as they assessed and repaired the ancient systems. "Vance, we need to get these defenses online," Jack called out, his fingers flying over a control panel. "I've got a bad feeling about—" His words were cut short by a distant explosion. Vance's eyes widened as he checked a nearby monitor. "Scion squad incoming. ETA 3 minutes." Back in the central levels, Daniel's group found themselves pinned down by a Scion strike team. Energy bolts sizzled through the air, leaving scorch marks on the metallic walls. Emperor Zarkin moved with surprising agility, his void-touch form rippling as he dodged enemy fire and returned it with deadly accuracy. "We need to push through," Daniel shouted over the din of battle. "Drex, can you access any internal defenses?" The commander nodded, pressing his hand against a nearby panel. Suddenly, the corridor filled with a high-pitched whine as hidden turrets emerged from the walls, catching the Scion forces in a devastating crossfire. As the last enemy fell, Daniel urged his team forward. They were close now. He could feel it. But as they approached the final stretch to the control room, Kira stumbled, her body convulsing as waves of energy pulsed through her. "Kira," Daniel rushed to her side, supporting her weight. "What's happening?" Her eyes were unfocused, glowing with an inner light. "The core. It's so strong here. I can feel everything." There was no time to lose. Daniel scooped Kira into his arms, tenacity etched on his face. "Drex, get that door open. We're almost there." The commander placed his hand on the massive door's access panel, his body resonating with the progenitor technology. Slowly, with a groan of ancient mechanisms, the entrance to the central control room began to open. Inside, a sight of breathtaking wonder awaited them. A massive crystalline structure dominated the center of the room, pulsing with nearly unleashed energy. As they approached, a holographic message sprang to life, revealing the image of a progenitor scientist. "Inheritors," the message began, "you stand before the culmination of our life's work. This device has the power to stabilize the empathic field, but be warned, its activation carries great risk." Before Daniel could process this information, the facility shook violently. A massive explosion tore through the outer defenses of the control room, and through the smoke and debris strode a towering figure in advanced battle armor, the Scion Commander. "Step away from the device," the commander's voice boomed, flanked by an elite strike force. "That technology belongs to us." Daniel's mind raced, searching for a solution. But before he could act, Kira stepped forward, her body emanating a soft glow. The Scion forces hesitated, sensing the power that radiated from her. Seizing the moment, Drex interfaced with the control room systems. A shimmering containment field sprang to life, separating the Scion forces from the stabilization device. But the field flickered unstably. They had only moments before it would fail. "Daniel, now!" Drex shouted, his voice strained with effort. Daniel lunged for the device's control panel, his fingers flying over the ancient interface. The crystalline structure began to hum, its energy output increasing rapidly. The Scion commander, realizing the danger, barked orders to his troops. "Breach that field. Stop them at all costs." As Emperor Zarkin and Drex engaged the enemy in a desperate battle, Daniel worked feverishly to initiate the stabilization sequence. Waves of energy began to pulse from the device, interacting with Kira's connection to the Nexus core in ways he couldn't comprehend. The control room filled with blinding light as the device reached full power. Daniel turned to Kira, seeing the energy field intensifying around her. He tried to reach her, to pull her away from the unknown effects of the activated technology, but found himself unable to move. Time seemed to slow as the containment field finally collapsed. The Scion forces poured into the room, weapons raised. The stabilization device thundered with power, its energy building to a crescendo. And at the center of it all stood Kira, her form ethereal and glowing, suspended between realities. Daniel strained against the invisible force holding him in place, his voice lost in the roar of energy and battle. The fate of galaxies hung in the balance as the ancient progenitor device unleashed its full potential, its effects yet unknown, and its power beyond measure. Comprehension. In that instant, the device unleashed its full potential. A blinding surge of energy erupted from the crystalline structure, engulfing the entire room in a searing white light. Daniel felt the invisible force holding him dissipate as the wave washed over him. He shielded his eyes, the roar of power drowning out all other sounds. As quickly as it began, the energy pulse subsided. Daniel blinked rapidly, trying to clear the spots from his vision. The control room had fallen eerily silent, save for the low hum of machinery. "Kira," he called out, his voice hoarse. Through the fading afterimage, he saw her crumpled form on the floor, still emanating a soft glow. He rushed to her side, cradling her head gently. Around them, the Scion forces lay motionless, their weapons scattered across the ground. The imposing figure of their commander was sprawled near the entrance, unmoving. Commander Drex and Emperor Zarkin, having been outside the immediate blast radius, cautiously approached. "Daniel, are you all right?" Drex asked, his eyes darting between Daniel and the unconscious Kira. Before Daniel could respond, a piercing alarm echoed through the facility. The Guardian's holographic form flickered into existence, its normally stoic features now etched with urgency. "Warning. Critical system failure detected," the Guardian announced, its voice resonating with artificial concern. "The stabilization device's activation has triggered a chain reaction in the station's power core. Complete structural collapse imminent. Evacuate immediately. Daniel's heart raced as he processed the Guardian's words. He scooped Kira into his arms, her body limp but still pulsing with that strange energy. "We need to move now," he shouted to Drex and Zarkin. They sprinted from the control room, the facility's alarms growing more insistent with each passing second. As they rounded a corner, they nearly collided with Jack, Vance, and the Zorax engineers. "The power core's going critical," Jack reported breathlessly. "We couldn't shut it down. This whole place is going to blow." Daniel nodded grimly. Back to the Nomad. "Double time." The group raced through the twisting corridors, the station groaning and shuddering around them. Sparks rained from damaged conduits, and the air grew thick with acrid smoke. They burst into the docking bay, only to find it partially collapsed. Debris littered the floor, and a massive support beam had fallen across their path to the stellar Nomad. "Jack, Vance, clear us a path," Daniel ordered, still cradling the unconscious Kira. The two men immediately set to work, straining to move the fallen beam. The Zorax engineers scurried to the bay's control panel, their tentacles working furiously to override the damaged door mechanisms. Commander Drex joined them, pressing his hand against the console. His eyes glowed as he interfaced with the facility's systems one last time. "I've got it," Drex called out. With a groan of protesting metal, the bay doors began to inch open. Jack and Vance finally managed to shift the debris enough for the team to squeeze through. They piled into the stellar Nomad, the ship systems already humming to life. "Strap in," Jack yelled as he threw himself into the pilot's seat. His hands flew across the controls, initiating the launch sequence. The stellar Nomad lifted off just as another violent tremor shook the docking bay. Debris rained down around them as Jack navigated the ship through the narrow opening. They burst into open space, leaving the disintegrating progenitor facility behind. But they weren't clear yet. The ancient station exploded in a brilliant flash of light, sending massive shockwaves rippling through space. Jack's piloting skills were put to the test as he weaved the Nomad through a field of high-energy debris and pulsing energy discharges. Inside the ship, Daniel gently laid Kira on a makeshift bed in the common area. Her body continued to emit a soft glow, pulsing in an odd rhythm. He noticed with a start that the pulse seemed to synchronize with the ship's newly integrated progenitor technology. Commander Drex, having made his way to the bridge, called out from a nearby console. "Daniel, you need to see this. The ship's absorbed some kind of energy from the stabilization device. Our systems are changing." As if to confirm Drex's words, the ship's long-range sensors suddenly flared to life, revealing the ongoing battle between the Alliance fleet and the Scion Armada. But before they could plot a course to rejoin the fight, the navigation system sputtered and died. "We're dead in the water," Vance reported, his fingers dancing across his terminal. "Whatever energy we absorbed, it's playing havoc with our conventional systems." Daniel's mind raced, weighing their options. They were stranded in an uncharted sector, their ship potentially unstable, with an unconscious Kira still glowing with unknown energy. And somewhere out there, the future of the cosmos hung in the balance. A soft moan from behind him caught Daniel's attention. He turned to see Kira stirring, her eyes fluttering open. But the eyes that met his were not the ones he recognized. They glowed with an otherworldly light, seeming to hold the vastness of space within their depths. When Kira spoke, her voice echoed with a power that sent shivers down Daniel's spine. "I can see it all now, Daniel. The Nexus core, the progenitor's legacy. I understand." Daniel knelt beside her, his voice barely above a whisper. "Kira, what's happened to you?" She sat up slowly, energy crackling around her like a living aura. "The stabilization device's energy. It's merged with me, with my connection to the Nexus core. I can guide us back, Daniel, but it will be dangerous. As the crew gathered around, Kira explained her plan. Using her newfound connection to the Nexus core and the ship's absorbed energy, she could generate an interdimensional portal. It would take them directly back to the heart of the battle. But the process, it will require channeling all of that energy through me, Kira concluded, her glowing eyes meeting each of theirs in turn. I don't know what effect it will have. Daniel looked around at his crew. Jack, his hands still on the controls, ready for anything. Vance, his analytical mind already running calculations. Commander Drex and the Zorax engineers, prepared to manage the ship's unstable systems. And Emperor Zarkin, his void-touch form rippling with anticipation. They all nodded, a silent agreement passing between them. They had come too far to turn back now. Do it, Daniel said to Kira, his voice firm despite the fear gnawing at his insides. Kira closed her eyes, her body rising slightly off the ground as energy crackled around her. The ship's hull began to vibrate, reality itself seeming to bend and warp. A swirling vortex of energy coalesced in front of the stellar nomad, growing larger with each passing second. Kira's face contorted with effort, the glow around her body intensifying. Brace yourselves, Jack called out as he guided the ship towards a dimensional rift. With a final surge of power, Kira propelled the stellar nomad into the swirling maelstrom. The ship plunged into a sea of light and energy, hurling through space and time. As they traveled, Daniel noticed the energy surrounding Kira beginning to fluctuate wildly. Her face was a mask of concentration and pain, sweat beading on her brow as she fought to maintain control over their journey. The ship bucked and shuddered, the crew holding on for dear life as they hurtled through the interdimensional rift. Daniel's eyes never left Kira, his heart pounding with equal parts awe and terror at the power she was channeling. Suddenly, the chaos around them ceased. The stellar nomad burst back into normal space, emerging in the midst of the raging battle between the Alliance fleet and the Scion Armada. Their sudden appearance caught both sides off guard. For a moment, the furious exchange of weapons fire paused. All eyes turned to the small ship that had materialized in the heart of the conflict. As the crew of the stellar nomad regained their bearings, Daniel turned to Kira. She had collapsed to the floor, her body still crackling with residual energy. He knelt beside her, gently lifting her head. Kira's eyes fluttered open, glowing even brighter than before. "We made it," she whispered, her voice laden with exhaustion and something else, a newfound power that Daniel couldn't begin to comprehend. Looking out at the frozen tableau of the battle around them, Daniel realized that their journey had only just begun. The knowledge and power they had acquired might be the key to ending this war, but at what cost? And how would they use it in the chaos that was about to erupt anew? As if on cue, the momentary lull in the battle shattered. Weapons fire once again crisscrossed the void of space, and the stellar nomad found itself at the center of a maelstrom of destruction and desperate hope. Hope! As the battle resumed with renewed intensity, Daniel's mind raced, searching for a way to turn this chaos into an advantage. "Jack, evasive maneuvers!" Daniel shouted, his eyes darting between the view screen and Kira's prone form. "We need to avoid becoming a target." Jack's hands flew across the controls, the stellar nomad lurching to starboard as a volley of Scion energy bolts screamed past. The ship's newly absorbed energy crackled along its hull, deflecting a glancing hit that would have otherwise torn through their shields. "Daniel, we've got a problem," Vance called out from his station, his voice tight with concern. "Kira's vitals are all over the place. Whatever that jump did to her, it's not good." Daniel knelt beside Kira, her skin still emanating a soft glow. Her eyes fluttered beneath closed lids, her breathing shallow and erratic. He placed a hand on her forehead, feeling the unnatural heat radiating from her body. Vance, see if you can stabilize her condition, Daniel ordered, his mind already moving to their next steps. Commander Drex, what's our ship status? Drex's eyes glowed as he interfaced with the Nomad systems. The energy we absorbed has integrated with our core systems. We have capabilities I don't fully understand yet, but our conventional systems are highly unstable. A proximity alarm blared, cutting through the tension. Jack's voice rang out. We're on a collision course with Admiral Krell's flagship. Daniel's head snapped up to the view screen, where the massive form of the Alliance command ship loomed. Jack, get us clear. The stellar Nomad banked hard, narrowly avoiding the flagship starboard array. As they leveled out, Daniel saw the battle frozen around them, all eyes seemingly fixed on their unexpected arrival. Vance, open a channel to Admiral Krell, Daniel commanded, straightening his posture. It's time we brought him up to speed. The comm system crackled to life, Admiral Krell's gruff voice filling the bridge. Stellar Nomad, what in the name of the cosmic veil is going on? We thought you were lost. Daniel took a deep breath, organizing his thoughts. Admiral, the progenitor facility has been destroyed. We encountered Scion forces and activated a device of immense power. Our ship has absorbed some of that energy, granting us new capabilities we're still trying to understand. There was a moment of stunned silence before Krell responded. New capabilities? Explain, and quickly. We're in the middle of a war zone. As Daniel began to elaborate, the temporary ceasefire shattered. Weapons fire once again filled space, the stellar Nomad finding itself at the center of the renewed assault. No time for a full debrief, Admiral, Daniel said, his tone urgent. We may have a way to turn the tide of this battle, but we need room to maneuver. Understood, Krell replied. I'll have the fleet create a diversion. Whatever you're planning, make it count. Daniel turned to his crew, persistence etched on his face. All right, people, we've got one shot at this. Drex, what can you tell me about these new capabilities? Drex's brow furrowed as he processed a flood of data. The ship seems to have developed some kind of empathic field generator. It's similar to the Nexus core, but on a much smaller scale. A plan began to form in Daniel's mind. Could we use it to disrupt the Scion fleet? Theoretically, yes, Drex nodded. But we need to get close to their command ship for maximum effect. Daniel's eyes narrowed as he surveyed the chaotic battlefield. Jack, plot a course through the heart of the Scion fleet. Vance, work with the Zorax engineers to modify that empathic field. We're going to give the Scion a taste of their own medicine. As the crew sprang into action, Emperor Zarkin stepped forward. I may be able to assist. My experience with Scion tactics could help refine our approach. Daniel nodded gratefully. We'll need all the help we can get. What do you suggest? Zarkin's void touch form rippled as he spoke. Target their flagship, disrupt their command structure, and the rest of the fleet will fall into disarray. Good thinking, Daniel agreed. Jack, adjust our course. We're going after the big fish. The stellar Nomad weaved through the battlefield, narrowly avoiding volleys of weapons fire from both sides. Daniel watched as Alliance ships engaged the Scion forces, creating the diversion they needed. We're approaching the target zone, Jack called out, his hands dancing across the controls. Vance's voice cut through the tension. Empathic field generator ready. On your mark, Daniel. Daniel took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on the looming form of the Scion flagship. Now, Vance, hit them with everything we've got. A wave of invisible energy pulsed from the stellar Nomad, washing over the nearest Scion ships. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Scion vessels began to drift aimlessly, their crews incapacitated by the sudden flood of empathic energy. It's working, Drex exclaimed, his eyes wide as he monitored the results. The Scion flagship systems are going dark. Daniel allowed himself a moment of satisfaction before the ship lurched violently. Warning alarms blared throughout the bridge. "What's happening?" Daniel demanded, steadying himself against a console. Drex's voice was tight with concern. "The progenitor technology is becoming unstable. The empathic field generator is putting too much strain on our systems." As if to punctuate his words, a shower of sparks erupted from a nearby panel. The ship shuddered again, more violently this time. "Vance, shut it down," Daniel ordered, but Vance was already shaking his head. "I can't. The process has become self-sustaining. If we don't find a way to stabilize it, we're looking at a catastrophic overload." Daniel's mind raced, weighing their options. The stellar nomad had become a ticking time bomb, capable of destroying a significant portion of both fleets if it detonated. "Jack, get us clear of the main battle," Daniel commanded. "Vance, contact Admiral Krell. Request immediate evacuation for the crew." As Jack piloted the increasingly unstable ship away from the conflict, Daniel made his way to Kira's side. Her body still pulsed with energy, seemingly in sync with the ship's erratic power fluctuations. A realization struck him. Kira's connection to the Nexus core might be the key to stabilizing the ship systems. It was a long shot, but it was their only chance. "Everyone, prepare to evacuate," Daniel announced, his voice firm despite the fear gnawing at his insides. "I'm staying behind with Kira. Her link to the Nexus core might be our only hope of preventing a disaster." Protests erupted from the crew, but Daniel silenced them with a raised hand. "That's an order. Get to the evacuation shuttles now." As the crew reluctantly filed out, Daniel turned his attention to Kira. Her eyes remained closed, her body still racked by the energy coursing through her. He took her hand, feeling the power thrumming beneath her skin. "Come on, Kira," he whispered, watching the approaching Alliance shuttles through the view screen. "I need you to wake up. We've got a ship to save, and I can't do it without you." The stellar nomad drifted further from the battle, its systems becoming increasingly erratic. Daniel stood alone on the bridge, Kira's unconscious form beside him, as he faced the monumental task of preventing an impending catastrophe. The fate of the ship, the surrounding fleets, and perhaps the entire war now rested in his hands. Hands and the fate of countless lives. Time was running out. Without hesitation, Daniel scooped Kira's limp form into his arms and made for the ship's core. The corridors seemed to stretch endlessly as he ran, the ship's tremors growing more violent with each passing second. Bursting into the core room, Daniel was momentarily stunned by the pulsing energy emanating from the central pillar. The progenitor technology had transformed the once familiar space into something alien and powerful. He gently laid Kira near the throbbing energy center, her body still glowing faintly. "Come on, Kira," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "We need you now more than ever." As if responding to his touch, Kira's eyes suddenly snapped open. Daniel stumbled back as her body rose into the air, suspended by tendrils of crackling energy that connected her to the ship's systems. Her eyes blazed with an otherworldly light, and Daniel could only watch in awe as she began to interface directly with the stellar nomad's newly integrated technology. The ship's alarms, which had been blaring incessantly, began to quiet. The violent shaking subsided, replaced by a low, steady hum. Daniel let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Kira was doing it. She was stabilizing the ship. But their troubles were just the beginning. A proximity alert blared from the nearest console, drawing Daniel's attention. He raced to the bridge, his heart pounding as he took in the tactical display. The Scion flagship, which they had disabled earlier with their empathic burst, was powering up again. Its weapon systems came online, targeting the vulnerable Alliance ships nearby. Daniel's hands flew across the weapons console, He targeted the Scion flagship, channeling power from the stabilized systems into a concentrated energy burst. The shot lanced out, striking the enemy ship's shields and causing them to flicker and fail. The action drew immediate attention. Several Scion ships broke off from the main battle, turning to pursue the stellar nomad. Daniel gritted his teeth, knowing he had just painted a giant target on their backs. He rushed back to the core room, where Kira still floated, her face contorted with effort. The strain on her body was evident. Her limbs shook, and beads of sweat rolled down her forehead. "Hang in there, Kira," Daniel said, even though he wasn't sure she could hear him. "I need to buy us some time." Racing back to the bridge, Daniel saw the approaching Scion ships on the sensors. He made a split-second decision, rerouting power from non-essential systems to the engines. The ship hummed with newfound energy, ready to push beyond its normal limits. As the enemy vessels closed in, Daniel activated the enhanced propulsion. The stellar nomad leaped forward, executing a series of high-speed maneuvers that would have torn a normal ship apart. They corkscrewed through space, narrowly avoiding energy beams and projectiles. Two of the pursuing Scion ships, unable to match the Nomad's impossible agility, collided in a spectacular explosion. The resulting debris field forced the other pursuers to scatter, giving Daniel the opening he needed. He banked hard, bringing the stellar Nomad around in a wide arc that led them back toward the Alliance fleet. As they approached friendly lines, a transmission came through. Admiral Krell's gruff voice filled the bridge. "Stellar Nomad, that was some impressive flying. We could use those capabilities of yours to end this battle once and for all. What do you say?" Daniel's mind raced, formulating a plan. "Agreed, Admiral. We'll use our empathic field generator in short, targeted bursts. Can you coordinate the fleet to disable the affected Scion ships?" "Affirmative," Krell responded. "We'll follow your lead." With a deep breath, Daniel piloted the stellar Nomad into the heart of the Scion fleet. He weaved through the chaos of battle, activating the empathic field generator at key points. Each burst sent waves of Scion ships drifting out of formation, their crews temporarily incapacitated. The Alliance fleet moved in with precision, disabling the affected vessels one by one. The tide of battle shifted dramatically as more and more Scion ships fell silent. As the last of the enemy fleet scattered or surrendered, Daniel allowed himself a moment of relief. He set a course back to the core room, needing to check on Kira. He found her unconscious once again, but the ship's systems had fully stabilized. The integration of the progenitor technology was complete, leaving the stellar Nomad humming with untapped potential. Cradling Kira in his arms, Daniel made his way to the airlock. As the stellar Nomad docked with Admiral Krell's flagship, he couldn't help but marvel at how much had changed in the span of a few hours. The airlock hissed open, revealing a team of Alliance medical personnel waiting to receive them. Daniel gently transferred Kira to a hovering stretcher, his hand lingering on hers for a moment before letting go. As he watched the medical team whisk Kira away to the flagship's medical bay, Daniel's mind turned to the challenges that lay ahead. The Scion forces were defeated, but managing the new alliance and understanding the full implications of the progenitor technology would require all of his skills and resources. Admiral Krell approached, his expression a mix of relief and curiosity. "I think it's time for that full debrief, Captain," he said, clapping Daniel on the shoulder. "We have a lot to discuss." Daniel nodded, casting one last glance in the direction Kira had been taken. As he followed the Admiral deeper into the flagship, he knew that the events of this day had set them on a new and uncertain path, one that would shape the future of the entire galaxy. The enormity of the task ahead deeply affected on Daniel's mind as he followed Admiral Krell through the winding corridors of the flagship. The debriefing stretched on for hours, with Daniel recounting every detail of the stellar Nomad's transformation and the pivotal role Kira, had played in their victory. As he spoke, he couldn't shake the nagging worry about Kira's condition. Days turned into weeks as the Alliance worked tirelessly to establish a new galactic order. Daniel found himself thrust into the center of delicate negotiations, his unique experiences and insights proving invaluable in bridging gaps between former enemies. Between meetings, he made frequent visits to the medical bay where Kira lay motionless in a stasis pod. The medical staff assured him that her vitals were stable, but the wait for her to regain consciousness seemed interminable. 1 month after the battle, Daniel sat in his temporary quarters aboard the flagship, poring over the latest draft of a complex treaty. His eyes strained against the harsh light of the datapad as he struggled to focus on the intricate legal jargon. A sudden chime from his communication device startled him from his concentration. He tapped the screen, and a holographic image of a medical officer appeared. "Captain Daniel, you need to come to the medical bay immediately," the officer said, her voice tinged with urgency. "It's Kira. She's awake." Daniel's heart leaped into his throat. He bolted from his chair, nearly knocking it over in his haste. The treaty forgotten, he raced through the corridors, dodging startled crew members as he made his way to the medical bay. As the door slid open, Daniel saw Kira sitting upright on the bed, surrounded by a team of doctors. His breath caught in his throat as she turned to face him. Her eyes, once a familiar shade of green, now swirled with a mesmerizing array of colors that seemed to pulse with an inner light. "Daniel," Kira said, her voice barely above a whisper, "we need to talk." The medical staff discreetly retreated, leaving them alone. Daniel approached cautiously, unsure of what to expect from this changed version of his friend. "Kira, how are you feeling?" he asked, taking a seat beside her bed. She smiled, but it was tinged with a gravity that sent a chill down Daniel's spine. "I'm fine, Daniel, but what I experienced during my coma, it's changed everything." Kira went on to explain how her mind had accessed vast repositories of knowledge from both the Nexus core and the progenitor technology. The information flooded her consciousness, revealing truths about the universe that left her both awed and terrified. "The Scion conflict," she said, her multicolored eyes fixed on Daniel. "It was just the beginning. There's a greater threat coming, Daniel. An extragalactic force drawn to our galaxy by the power of the Nexus core." Daniel opened his mouth to respond, but before he could form words, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red emergency lights bathed the medical bay in an eerie glow as a computerized voice announced a Level 1 alert. Without hesitation, Daniel helped Kira to her feet. They made their way to the bridge, where they found Admiral Krell barking orders to his crew. The main view screen showed a terrifying sight. A cluster of unknown vessels had appeared at the edge of the system, their designs unlike anything they had ever encountered. "What are we dealing with, Admiral?" Daniel asked, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his insides. Krell turned, his face grim. "Unknown, Captain. But their technology, it's beyond anything we've ever seen. Even the Scion ships pale in comparison." As the Alliance fleet scrambled to defensive positions, Daniel exchanged a meaningful look with Kira. They both knew what needed to be done. "Admiral," Daniel said, straightening his posture, "request permission to return to the Stellar Nomad. Its unique capabilities might be our best chance against this new threat." Krell nodded without hesitation. "Granted. Go, and Godspeed." Daniel and Kira raced through the docking bay, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. As they approached the Stellar Nomad, Daniel's gaze fell upon a small, forgotten container tucked away in a corner of the cargo hold. His heart skipped a beat as recognition dawned. It was the stasis pod containing the alien baby he had adopted years ago, a memory almost lost in the chaos of recent events. Before Daniel could process this revelation, the pod began to glow. A soft humming filled the air as the container's surface rippled like water. To their astonishment, the pod opened, revealing not an infant, but a fully grown alien being. The creature stepped forward, its form a striking blend of various species. It stood tall, with iridescent skin that shifted colors like the surface of a soap bubble. Its eyes, deep and knowing, fixed upon Daniel and Kira with unmistakable intelligence. "Greetings, Daniel," the being said, its voice resonant and multi-layered. "I am the last of the progenitors, placed in stasis eons ago to guide the galaxy in its time of greatest need. That time has come." Daniel's mind reeled as he struggled to comprehend the implications of this revelation. The alien baby he had cared for, the act of compassion that had set him on this path, it had all been part of a grand design. The progenitor's gaze shifted to the viewports, where the unknown ships loomed ever closer. "We have much to discuss," it said, "but time is short. The fate of not just this galaxy, but countless others, hangs in the balance. Are you ready to face your destiny, Daniel?" As alarms continued to blare and the Alliance fleet mobilized around them, Daniel looked from the progenitor to Kira, then back to the alien being that had once been his adopted child. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever challenges lay ahead. "I'm ready," he said, his voice firm with tenacity. "Tell me what we need to do."
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.